Sword of Coming Chapter 1225. Chapter 1225, Killing and Ascension. Back at the house, before Chen Pingan entered the door, he heard Lu Xianyang's loud voice, talking about how he was in swordsmanship on Jinwu Mountain and what a hero he was. Gu Kan didn't bother to expose Lu Xianyang's braggadocio and not write a draft. This guy went to the Jinwu Mountain Patriarch Hall to block the door, but there was no conflict. The two male and female patriarchs of Jinwu Mountain who rushed to the door were very respectful to the master of the Longquan sword sect, and even let him. Lu Xianyang visited several forbidden halls that were usually not open to the public. When Gu Kan arrived there, Lu Jianxian was drinking tea leisurely. I just don't deny that Lu Xianyang is quite human-like when he is serious. He can be said to be a swordsman or a swordsman, and the sect leader is full of style. When going to Jinwu Mountain, Lu Xianyang directly wielded his sword to the ancestral hole. When leaving, he took Gu Kan and walked down the mountain together. Facing an old master of Jinwu Mountain who personally sent them to the mountain gate, Lu Xianyang smiled and asked if he wanted to make up for the etiquette himself. The implication is that he can first pass through the mountain gate, then walk through the Shinto, and finally walk down the mountain again. The old master who was responsible for adding lamp oil to the ancestral hall year after year smiled and said Lu Jianxian didn't need to be so polite. Before Ma Kushuan came down from the mountain, he had already separated from the genealogy and left behind a number of extremely rare and valuable treasures. It was considered that he and Jinwu Mountain had taken the initiative to repay the debt of preaching to Jinwu Mountain without any debt to each other. Not only that, even the name and Taoist title of Yu Shiwu were cancelled by Ma Kushuan on the closely guarded golden and jade genealogy of the ancestral master hall in Jinwu Mountain. Gu Kan saw Chen Pingan slowly walking into the hospital. Why did he seem to be even more depressed? He asked in his heart, "What's going on?" Chen Pingan said, "It's nothing. It can't be explained clearly in a few sentences. I don't have the energy to speak for the time being. I will review it with you when I have the opportunity." Lu Xianyang didn't know whether he was generous or didn't see anything, so he waved to Chen Pingan and said, "Come in and drink." Chen Pingan said, "If you can't drink, I'll take my share. If you want to drink more, you can do it for me." Lu Xianyang laughed and said, "Whether the hometown wine is beautiful or not depends on whether it is close to the people in the hometown. I almost forgot, this is not a small town." When Chen Pingan sat down on the bench, Gu Kan looked outside the house and asked for no reason, "Can you understand it this way? Rain is actually raining money." Lu Xianyang said carelessly, "Spring rain is as valuable as oil, and long drought brings rain. As the old saying goes, it's not about spending money." Gu Kan was non-committal. Gu Lingyan was more curious about the young Yingwen's answer. "I never thought that Chen Pingan would just echo, 'That's understandable.'" Gu Kan glanced at Lu Xianyang. What was wrong? Lu Xianyang was so angry. "You two are half-hearted scholars who have never attended a serious school for a day, so you don't take seriously a serious scholar like me?" Sensing Chen Pingan's eyes, Lu Xianyang understood and shook his head. In any case, Lu Xianyang had no great benefit from the beginning to the end of this disunion of the founder of the three religions. Gu Kan said without hesitation, "Lu, when are you going to have the wedding banquet? To be precise, can you serve the banquet earlier or later?" Lu Xianyang sprayed a sip of wine at Gu Kan. Gu Kan waved his sleeves to scatter the hidden weapons. Lu Xianyang cursed angrily, "Little slug, if you don't want to be the best man, just say so. Do you think I'm a stranger to you?" Gu Kan said angrily, "I don't care about being the best man, I just want to listen to Chang Zhen." Lu Xianyang was immediately defeated and said angrily, "This kind of vulgar custom should be avoided if possible." Chen Pingan was a little strange and asked in his heart, "Yushuan Kingdom is not close to Jinwu Mountain. How do you get there and back? Did you use the Three Mountains talisman?" Lu Xianyang sneered and said, In his free time, Lu Jianxian created his own sword light escape, which is enough to open up the world, and his speed is not inferior to that of the Ascension Realm monks. Gu Kan said, "There is a secret escape method in Baidi City, but it is expensive to use and has a fly in the ointment. Generally, genealogy monks in sects seek Taoism and Dharma, but in Baidi City, Gu Kan chose Taoism and Dharma to learn based on his mood and experience." Pu Lu and others, although they had already made guesses in their minds, when Gu Kan actually said the 3 words, Baidi City, they still pretended not to hear this, and pretended not to know who the young man in scholar's shirt was drinking at the same table. Chen Pingan asked in his heart, "Is there something urgent?" Gu Kan said, "Lu Yuzhou has just promised me to serve as the deputy sect leader. Due to emotions and reasons, I want to go to the capital city of Yunyan State in Tonggishao to meet this future right-hand man." After saying goodbye to Man Huang, Gu Kan asked Yu Xuanfu to help deliver a few words and a gift to Lu Yuzhou. It is hoped that Lu Yuzhou can serve as the deputy sect leader of the new sect. In the future, everything in the sect, inside and outside, from people to things, except for the sect leader Gu Kan, will be personally assigned and arranged by Lu Yuzhou. Gu Kan also gave Lu Yuzhou a small wooden box inlaid with hundreds of treasures. It was empty. However, if the ban is successfully lifted, you can talk to Gu Kan. Even if both parties are in the same continent, there are limits on the number of words and the time limit, and is directly linked to the level of both parties. Gu Kan has always had a temperament that dares to think and act. Since everyone is competing for talents, he will grab one of the richest Qigong practitioners in the future. The one he fell in love with was Lu Yuzhou, the future head of the Lu family in Aai-Zhou. On the other hand, the Shujian Lake Oriole Island Zhongsu and others are actually dispensable. Lu Xianying rubbed his chin. "It's really not a trivial matter, little slug, I forgive you. If you have to hurry up and try not to miss being the best man to drink the wedding wine. It's up to Chen Pingan to persuade the wine, and it's up to you to stop the wine. As long as you are here, I am not afraid of being drunk anymore. It's a night of flowers and candles in the wedding room, so we can't sleep soundly until dawn." Chen Pingan hesitated for a moment and then said cautiously, "Lu Xianying, can you and Xianhui have a wedding banquet with wine in this year's Mid-Autumn Festival?" I turned over the almanac and asked the ceremonial saint. "It is indeed a good day to get married. Of course, if the date has already been decided, just pretend I didn't say anything." Gu Kan curled his lips. If Master Wan had already made arrangements, and Chen Pingan came to do this, he would probably not even think about being Lu Xianyang's best man, or even thinking about having a wedding banquet. Lu Xianyang's eyes lit up, he rubbed his hands and laughed. "It's so embarrassing to ask the ceremonial saint about this kind of thing. If possible, I just say what if, Chen Pingan, you have a lot of face now, why not just do it? The ceremonial saint invites you to come over for the wedding banquet. It would be better if you can sit at the main table and say a few words to prove the marriage." Chen Pingan had a headache when he heard it, and he stretched out his hand to rub the center of his brow. But he was thinking about this matter seriously. If he had previously agreed to Li Xing to become an official in the Confucian Temple, would it be feasible? However, Gu Kan began to pour cold water on the hot-headed sect master Lu, and sneered, "What, do you want Chen Pingan to drag the Li Xing to listen to Chang Zhen again?" Lu Xianying quickly turned around and said a few childlike words. Lu Xianying drank a bowl of wine, wiped his lips and said with a smile, "The specific date for serving the wine has not been decided yet. Will it be August 15th this year? I will go to your sister-in-law to make the calculation first, and then discuss it with blacksmith Wan. Anyway, you two just wait for me to notify you of the date. Little slug, you just need to go to Tonggishao first. It's best to meet Lu Yuzhou, and then establish the sect like a fool. By then, the 3 of us will all be together. Is he the sect master? It would be nice to spread the word. By the way, Chen Pingon, inviting the ceremonial saint to drink wedding wine is a joke. Don't take it seriously. But there is something you must do for me, that is, Ning Yao must give it to your sister-in-law. Be a bridesmaid. I am not discussing this matter with you, I am giving you orders and you must follow them, do you hear me? Chen Pingon smiled and nodded. It was rare that Gu Kan did not create trouble. He nodded and promised, then I will establish the sect as soon as possible. Not counting guest ministers and some unnamed worshippers whose identities were concealed, the hundreds of monks with genealogies displayed on the bright side of Baidi city were divided into two by Jing Juzhong and given to two direct disciples. This meant that the two sects founded by Fu Su and Gu Kan were about to equally share Jing Juzhong's strong family fortune that had been accumulated for 3,000 years. It also means that Gu Kan, who has already become more mature, will suddenly become a prominent figure with the most say in Hauran continent. Lu Xianying asked from the bottom of his heart, the separation of Baidi city at this juncture, does this mean that you are regarded as Mr. Jing's close disciple by default? Gu Kan shook his head and said with great certainty, I am definitely not Master's disciple. Lu Xianying asked curiously, does City Lord Bai favor you more, or does he favor his disciple Fu Qi more? Chen Pingon rolled his eyes. Lu Xianying said angrily, what are you doing? Is it wrong for a big brother to care about his little brother? Chen Pingon raised his chin and said, keep going. Gu Kan took a sip of wine and said slowly, it's not about favoring anyone. Fu Shi and I each have our own advantages and disadvantages in dividing the family property this time. Monk, from the quantity to the realm, the master has already calculated it very accurately. Except for Han Qiao, if Sei joins my sect, the entire Jinsui city will also be merged into my sect, two immortals. Lu Qiqing and Liuli Gu follow Fu Qi, and there is an unidentified Ascension Realm monk who hides his head and tail, by the chief worshipper of the imperial city. This person will protect the sect leader Fu Qi. The owner of that golden green city in the wild world is the female fairy Qingjia named Yuanhu. She owns a lot of high-quality robes including water refining and banana leaf. And Jinquaqing itself is a money tree that can make money roll in. Zhu Lian kidnapped a fox country from the Su family in Qingfeng City. Jing Juzhong moved the entire Jinsui city in the barbaric world. This is called peering. There is nothing to say about the rest of the Jade Pure Realm and Earth Immortal monks. Master believes that their achievements are limited. The only thing I feel regretful about is that I couldn't get an unknown female cultivator from Master from the 2 times I opened my mouth. Her realm is average. On the surface, she's just a stagnant person. She is in the Jade Pure Realm, but she has a special status. With her or without her, the difference between a sect is quite big. Lu Xianying clicked his tongue and was filled with envy. He picked up the wine bowl and said, this family's inheritance is unprecedented. My mouth is watering after hearing this. I must drink to calm down my shock. Chen Pingon asked with a smile, does she have some kind of innate power? Gu Kan nodded and said, similar to the maid named Ji Qing who followed Du Shanin. Chen Pingon understood instantly and expressed regret for Gu Kan, this must be a pity. Lu Xianying clicked his tongue and said, my eyes are open when I see money, but I won't change my nature. The 2 ancestral coins of Shirenxuewa are naturally treasured by the Lu family of Aai. After all, the Lu family's ancestors relied on this mine to make their fortune. As for whether the great Tao has manifested into a human body, there have never been any rumors. If so, what is it? What appearance and posture it takes to appear in this world is a mystery. According to the inside story that the white-haired boy leaked to Chen Pingon, the ancestral money in the world is always in pairs, which means that there are existences like Chongqing and Jiqing in the world. Lu Xianying asked, you really don't want to drink? Chen Pingon shook his head and said, 1 or 2 pots of fairy brew, a little bit of spiritual energy, and drizzle cannot quench the thirst of the human body and the world. Lu Xianying frowned and said, is it so exaggerated? Chen Pingon said, it's okay. Just go back to the mountain and practice slowly. You can make up for it later. Chen Pingon was a bit overwhelmed by the killer spell that struck him with all his strength from a demon that had reached the Ascension realm. Even though he was prepared for it, Chen Pingon was still a little overwhelmed. Not only the pain of the skin and body, but also the chaos of the heaven and earth brought about by the agitation of the soul, Chen Pingon needs to carefully reconcile it, which consumes countless thoughts. What is really troublesome is this sinister sap, which makes Chen Pingon almost deflated like a bird in a cage, just like a hole in the Yellow River cave sky was poked by Bai Ye's sword. This left Chen Pingon with lingering fears. The key to such an unforeseen disaster was that he didn't even know his enemy's name, Taoist name, or master's biography. Chen Pingon was so angry that he wanted to pretend to be heroic and drink a few bowls of wine on the table to make Lu Xianying and Gu Can slightly don't worry, I'm afraid of vomiting blood while drinking. If his merits weren't enough to support him from traveling to the underworld in Fengdu, would Chen Pingon really want to take Xiao Mo and Xie go to the underworld together, digging 3 feet into the ground to dig out that ghost, a candidate for the 14th realm? I walk up to you and let you kill me. However, Chen Pingon knew very well that since this ghost dared to act like this, it would not only be difficult to kill, but also even harder to find. Not wanting to talk about these troublesome things, Chen Pingon changed the subject, looked at Gu Can, and said with a smile, where's Brother Longbow? Gu Can said, I don't know where to find it. Chai Bofu is not on the list. I don't know where it was thrown by the master. He is also a wonderful person. When he went to practice in Baidi City, Chai Bofu fell into a state of being as good as eating home-cooked food. No wonder Chen Pingon would ask about this person, half a fellow. Chen Pingon asked, I heard that you accepted a student. Gu Can felt a little embarrassed for the first time. There is a Jade Pu realm wild cultivator in Fuyao Island, his name is Huang Huashan. Because of a trivial matter, Gu Can has been pestering him for more than 2 years. He couldn't beat Gu Can, who had many different skills, and Gu Can at that time couldn't kill him either. Gu Can was very patient and always followed her, specializing in making the other person sick, making them like a pair of crazy men and women entangled in love and hate. In the end, the yellow flower god was so sad and angry, but you let me have a stable meal and a clean shit? In the end, there was really no other way out, so Huang Huashan had no choice but to admit defeat and admit his mistake with Gu Can. Gu Can said that he was not sincere enough and refused to count, so we continued to reason. Huang Huashan almost collapsed on the spot. Later, Huang Huashan followed Gu Can and performed the disciple ceremony. He changed his body, changed his previous temperament, and became very dignified in his behavior and speech. It's also an interesting anecdote on the mountain. For people who like wine, wine is a thing that can relieve thousands of worries. Wine is a prajna soup that can make people have wild dreams and become a Buddha. Lu Xianying rarely talked about his time as a student at Chunruchen, and talked about his former classmates. I remember that on the day before a spring outing in Shaanxi one year, there were 2 poor men in the same dormitory. They were not bad in origin, well-educated. They thought that learning was hard work and did not want to give them more money. They wanted to ask for extra money from the family. Can only buy books. So much so that the 2 wealthy disciples often joked to themselves that they had never worn silk clothes before they were 16 years old. They planned to boil a few eggs for food that day and boiled water. Since they didn't know how long it would take to cook, they used chopsticks to poke one of the eggs. If it wasn't cooked yet, they waited again. Lu Xianying, who returned to the school at that time, was very happy to see him. One person said that he was useless as a scholar, and another person said that he was nothing more than that. Later, one of these two people wrote books and became a master of the School of Historical Geography, and the other became a famous Ran family in South Pajuo. Unlike Chen Pingan, who gets more and more bored as he drinks, Lu Xianyang can't control his mouth as long as he drinks freely. 2 ounces of wine can produce the same voice and vigor as 2 pounds of wine. Chen Pingan suddenly stood up and said, "I'm going to meet a friend outside the door. You continue to drink yours." When I opened the door, the sky was blazing with clouds, and the sunset reflected a young woman in a plain horse-faced skirt. I don't know if it's because of the slight application of powder and dark eyebrows, or because the clouds linger on my face and don't want to leave. It turned out that the female ghost Shui Rui had the courage to come to this alley and pretended to be passing by. It didn't seem to matter whether she saw the Taoist priest Wu Di or not. When the door creaked open and she suddenly saw a strange man in a green shirt, she felt a little flustered. But when she looked again, she blinked her long autumn eyes, recognized the man's identity, and said with a blessing, "I've seen Chen Qin. Mountain Lord." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Miss Shui doesn't need to see anyone outside, just call me Taoist Master Wu." Shui Rui didn't know how to answer. Just now she caught a glimpse of the bustle in the main hall. So many guests. Yes, it is him after all. As long as he does not close the door to thank guests and does not close the mountain to practice Taoism, no matter where he settles down, there will naturally be no idlers coming and going, and everyone will be in high spirits. Besides her secluded haunted house, the loneliness made her often sit on the swing, waiting for the sound of cars rumbling outside the wall in the dusk. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "I won't stay here for long. I will go home soon. I welcome Miss Shui to visit Luola Mountain when she is free." Shui Rui nodded and smiled, hiding his hands behind his back and intertwining his fingers, trying to make himself less nervous and not make the two of them look so unfamiliar. Chen Pingan hesitated for a moment and asked, "Miss Shui, I would like to ask, when things happen in the capital, the boy next door will also have an official career. After that, does Miss Shui want to establish a sect somewhere in Yushuan Kingdom, or cooperate with the imperial court? Discuss, should we enshrine a landscape deity and enjoy incense sacrifices? Or should we travel first to relax and then find a place where we can practice pure practice?" Shui Rui shook her head and murmured softly, "I didn't expect it to be this far." Chen Pingan thought for a moment and said with a smile, "For the first 2 options, there is a person in the house who is a friend I just met. He happens to be able to help and can talk to the court of Yushuan Kingdom. As for the 3rd option, it's not difficult, I also have friends taking care of the 5 Islands sect in Shujian Lake there." Although Huang Lai had just resigned as imperial advisor, it was still easy to think of helping Shui Rui deliver a message to His Majesty the Emperor. Lu Xianyang would not miss this kind of excitement. He rushed over and leaned against the door, watching with a smile. Gu Ken was afraid that the ivory would not come out of his dog's mouth, so he had no choice but to follow him. As expected, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. Lu Xianyang really didn't give Gu Ken any chance to be surprised. He quickly joked in his heart, "Chen Pingan, you are now promising. I dare not take you to Luola Mountain, so I have to leave it outside. Where is the beautiful girl in the golden house?" He received an elbow from Gu Kan, and Lu Xianyang immediately grinned. Chen Pingan continued, "If you feel that Shujian Lake is too close, you can go to Qinghu Palace in Tonggishao or Taiping Mountain. They are both good places with good reputations." Gu Kan smiled and said, "If Miss Shui is willing, you can take a few more steps to Fuyao Island in the southwest and treat it as a sightseeing tour. There is a sect with a strange name over there called Back Mountain, which is very easy to find. You can find out who you are looking for by just asking. I am still the worshipper of the Back Mountain, so I can write a letter to help introduce you. Shui Rui smiled and said, Mr. Qin, are you trying to drive me away? Chen Pingan laughed dumbly. For a while I didn't know how to explain the reason. If he hadn't seen the woman in green skirt in Chongyang, but had replaced him with Shui Rui in front of him, even with Lu Chen's mugwort guarding the door, the consequences would still be unpredictable. Xiaopa's realm is high enough, and a trip of time if the long river flows back, her body can bear the sequelae, and she may even have the opportunity to be a blessing in disguise and turn it into a great income. Shui Rui may not be able to accept this kind of surprise. In many things, Chen Pingan doesn't think that being bitten by a snake once and being afraid of the rope for 10 years is a derogatory term. Shui Rui looked at the two people at the door and asked, but sect leader Lu and Master Gu Xian. As a result, both of them were unhappy. Because Shui Rui happened to say the opposite. Probably she felt that the leader Lu of the Longquan sword sect should be a gentle and elegant swordsman. Gu Kan, the madman from Baidi City, is a playful and cynical character. Chen Pingan smiled from ear to ear. Okay. Miss Shui said this so well that they both felt like two basins were on their heads at the same time. As soon as he opened his mouth, he couldn't help but cough a few times. Chen Pingan quickly put his fist to his mouth and stopped laughing. His face and eyes were still full of smiles. Gu Ken was okay and just smiled. Lu Xianying said aggrievedly, Miss Shui, we are familiar with each other, but I must say that once you said it, what look in your eyes, no wonder you would lure the wolf into the house and let Chen Pingan stay in your house. Gu Ken said something fair, who is familiar with you? Miss Shui is. Before Gu Ken could finish speaking, Chen Pingan kicked him back. There was a shoe print on the gown, and Gu Ken shook the gown with a smile. Shui Rui turned sideways, folded her clothes and saluted, and said with a smile, Mr. Qin, I am here today just to say thank you. Don't say anything about kindness, especially not to outsiders. Don't forget when you've received a favor, and it's best to tell others about it. Chen Pingan smiled and nodded. Shui Rui thought about it seriously and said, as for whether to stay or go, we will discuss it later. If I have an idea one day, I will definitely not be polite to Mr. Qin and send a letter to Luopa Mountain immediately. The person who felt the most regretful was actually not Chen Pingan, but Huang Lai, who was listening to the conversation with his ears pricked up in the room. I wish I could run out the door and beg her for something. If Shui Rui is really willing to stay in Yushuan Kingdom, whether she is to start a sect or find a landscape Empress Dang Dang to build a temple, an ancestral temple, Huang Lai really just wants to have a word or two with Emperor Shui Pang. Does the female ghost Shui Rui owe a favor to former Imperial Master Huang Lai? Definitely not, but Mr. Qin, the matchmaking middleman, owed a certain favor to Huang Chongfeng. Does Chen Pingan need to return the favor? Of course there is no need for it, and even if Chen Pingan gives it, Huang Lai will never accept it. As long as he doesn't accept it, he will have an extra iron coupon for the alchemy book given by the sect master, which is equivalent to an extra gold medal for immunity from death. Huang Lai was wondering whether she should say hello to Emperor Shui Pang and the imperial court secretly help her. Gu Kan, who had his back to the hall, said from his heart, Huang Zongfeng, I advise you not to add any unnecessary extravagance. Huang Lai was horrified when his thoughts were read, and he accused him repeatedly. Shui Rui came out of the alley, picked up her skirt and a pair of embroidered shoes and chose a dry place on the street to settle down. Of course she sincerely thanked and respected Mr. Qin. But for some reason, she still felt that the Taoist priest Wu Di, who was generous, was more interesting and approachable. There is no wine table in life, but the cup should always be filled with wine. Chen Pingan packed some soft parcels and packed them into something within easy reach. Of course, he did not forget the fortune-telling stall that could be disassembled and reassembled. If you have many skills, you will not be overwhelmed. In the future, when you go out, in addition to working as a baggage owner, you can also go back to your old business and set up a stall to make money. Chen Pingan asked, "What do you say? Should we go directly to Tongisao? Or go to Nujiadu and wait for a cross-continental ferry?" Gu Kan said, "Go to Nujiao ferry." Lu Xianying asked lazily, "How do we go back? The 3-mountain talisman is too precious, and we can't use it more. We have to save some money. If it were just the 3 of them, it would be okay, even if they didn't use the 3-mountain talisman, or the sword or the wind." Gu Kan said, "I have a Liuxia boat, which is not slow. After leaving the capital, we can take the boat back to Nujiadu." Lu Xianyang clicked his tongue in surprise. "This is a good thing. Have you ever heard of it? How did you get it?" Gu Kan said, "There are several secret warehouses in Baidi City that are unattended. I often go there to wander around and relax. One of the secret warehouses used to store treasures is this Liuxia boat. It is idle anyway. He refined it and brought it out again." Lu Xianyang was shocked and said, "Then you are a domestic thief, and City Lord Jing doesn't care?" Gu Kan said, "Since you don't care, you just don't care. Does Fu Qi dare?" "He didn't dare." Lu Xianyang asked, "A lot of treasures on the Liuxia boat?" Gu Kan nodded and said, "All of them belong to me." Huang Lai's eyelids trembled as the two sides did not use their true feelings in the conversation. As expected from Baidi City, the road is really wild. After that, they hid their bodies together, hid their whereabouts, and quietly left the capital of Yushuan Kingdom in the wind, arriving at a secluded mountain on the border of Jiao Mountain. Grandmaster Shen is currently in the Golden Body realm and cannot travel far across the earth, so he is the only one who can be carried on someone's shoulders and travel far away. Gu Kan took out a palm-sized pocket fairy from his sleeve. He first used secret techniques to unlock the restrictions, and then threw it into the air. Suddenly, it was as big as a normal ghost ship, hanging in the air. Lu Xianyang boarded the Liuxia boat, which was famous all over the world, and asked tentatively, "Sect Master Gu, please ask Mr. Zhang, does he still accept anonymous disciples?" Gu Kan sneered and said, "Do you think I should be my godson?" Lu Xianyang reached out and grabbed Gu Kan's arm. "Besides City Lord Jing, are there any other ways?" Gu Kan raised his arms and said, "Crawl away." Lu Xianyang said with a playful smile, "Chen Pingan is injured. You feel sorry for me. How can I be a hero if you take it out on me?" Chen Pingan asked doubtfully, "Can you refine a huge thing like Liuxia Zhou?" Gu Kan hummed and said, "There is a long-lost ancient secret technique in Baidi City, which specializes in refining objects and transforming them into emptiness. However, the threshold for practicing is not low. As far as I know, only Han Chaose is proficient in this technique." In order to after learning this Taoist technique, she scrapped a lot of artifacts on the mountain, including more than 30 magic weapons. "I am more interested in this, but I still only learned a little bit, and it can't be considered as an intrusion. If you want to, I will make a copy for you later." Chen Pingan waved his hand. Since it is one of the 12 great arts she vowed to learn, once you learn it, don't tell anyone about it. Gu Kan said, "Don't you and her have a business deal? It's not like exchanging money for Taoism is non-negotiable." Chen Pingan glared and said, "We are all people who want to be the leader of the sect, but they still can't understand the other mountain rules of the sect. Do you understand the difference between closeness and distance? Do you really think Han Chaoso won't be sad?" After giving a lesson, Chen Pingan went to choose a room to sleep in, and asked Lu Xianyang to leave the boundary of Huashan before waking him up. Lu Xianyang uttered an ouch and said, "You have good intentions and are scolded for nothing. Someone is feeling miserable." Gu Kan, who was clearly being treated as a fool for his good intentions, snorted, but his mood improved. Gu Kan asked Gu Lingyan to control the floating cloud boat. As for Huang Lai and Shen Ku, they could just choose a room to rest. Lu Xianying followed Gu Kan all the time, which made Gu Kan, who had his own plans, angrily said, "Why don't you just lift a toilet behind my butt?" Lu Xianying put his arms around Gu Kan's neck and said with a smile, "Let's say a few words of respect to each other." Gu Kan came to a room with many restrictions, opened the door, and stood outside. "Pick a few things for yourself, and then get out. I only have one request, you are not allowed to use the chinkuan in your sleeves." Lu Xianying complained, "Why did I get such a tacky brother like you? Wow, haha, I got rich." The house was filled with precious light, so dazzling that it almost blinded Uncle Lu. Gu Kan is about to close the door. Lu Xianying quickly stretched out his hand to hold the door of the house, and said solemnly, "You are vulgar, and I am aloof? No way." Gu Kan sat on the threshold and didn't bother to care about what Lu Xianying picked. He just took a few items and let him go. A bamboo basket with fish, a muntjac leg, a basket of eggs, half a drawer of steamed buns. When Lu Xianying gave these things to the slugs in Mud Bottle Lane, he didn't even blink. Entering the house was like entering a treasure mountain. Lu Xianying touched this item and rubbed his face against that item, and was dazzled. Gu Kan didn't push him, and just sat there patiently. Lu Xianying turned around and shouted, "Sect Master Gu, can you lend me a few things that are close to you?" If he didn't mention this kind of request, he wouldn't be Lu Xianying. Gu Kan turned a deaf ear. "It's bad for me. I can't watch it anymore. I really can't watch it anymore. If I watch it again, I will really have the intention of killing people and stealing goods." Lu Xianying covered his eyes with one hand and came to sit next to Gu Kan as if he was smearing. The two doorkeepers. Gu Kan said, "Would you like to take it? Be careful not to wait until I say something." Lu Xianying smiled and said, "Forgot. I am different from you and Chen Pingon. When have I ever worried about my livelihood? When have I taken advantage of you too?" Gu Kan nodded. Thinking back to those days, Chen Pingan's biggest dream was to do business with Lu Xianying and make money together when he grew up. He started doing things and let Lu Xianying make the decision. As for Gu Kan, it's even simpler. If he eats and drinks with them, he will definitely not be hungry, so he can just lie down and enjoy the happiness. Who made him the youngest? Lu Xianying carefully took out a jade plaque from his sleeve and handed it to Gu Kan. "Be careful not to break it. This is an old item." Gu Kan took over and asked doubtfully, "Give me a gift in advance for founding the sect." Lu Xianying laughed angrily and said, "What the are you thinking? I'm showing off my wealth to you, and I can't get back my place." Gu Kan asked, "Is it an ancient cave that is not recorded in the records, or is it a broken blessed land?" Lu Xianying smiled and said, "It doesn't matter whether it is a cave or a blessed land. Do you have it?" "Chen Pingon has the lotus root blessed land, and I also have a small cave, but Sect Master Gu, you are a bit shabby." Gu Kan suddenly raised his hand high, pretending to throw the jade token. Lu Xianying immediately apologized and said, "No, no, no, Brother Gu, I will kneel down for you." Gu Kan casually threw the jade token back to Lu Xianying. Things that have never been seen in the world are rare. Lu Xianying caught the jade plaque with both hands, breathed a sigh of relief, and wiped it carefully with his sleeve. It was called Shui Tian Dong Tian in ancient times. The territory is not big, but the mystery is not small. If it were not compared with Baidi City, the Longquan sword sect, now headed by Lu Xianying, was actually not poor and had a strong family background. Moreover, it was famous in Aquarius continent for having small expenses and large accounts. As the last saint in charge of Liju Cave Heaven, Wan Qiong made a deal with Old Man Yang and secretly bought a cave heaven and a blessed land from the other party. But regarding this matter, only 2 people in the entire Longquan sword sect know about it now. Apart from one blacksmith who went to concentrate on forging iron swords, there is only Lu Xianyang who succeeded the sect leader. Shui Tian Cave, also known as Qingyang Cave, is not among the 10 major caves and the 36 small caves. The misty blessed land is a middle-grade blessed land. There are no people inside, only mountain spirits, water monsters, and charming plants and flowers. It really feels like a paradise. A jade plaque and a piece of text inscribed, "It is not the blue dragon that serves as the water supervisor, the land becomes the ravine and the water becomes the field." On one side of the seal on the side is engraved with, "As time goes by in the world, there are many hazes here. The blessed land is in the earth, in the people, in the heaven and earth, in the materials and treasures, in the cave and in the heaven, in the Tao, in the latent souls cultivating immortals." According to Ruanqiong's plan, the Shuetian cave was handed over to Lu Xianyang and opened as a private dojo. It was regarded as a benefit that belonged exclusively to the sect master. It could be passed down from generation to generation in the hands of the sect master in the future. As for the caves obtained by each new sect master, were they acquired by the predecessor? Whether the sect master ruined it or enriched it, it all depends on their own fate. Ruanqiong doesn't care about this. Children and grandchildren in the market have their own blessings, let alone practicing Taoism in the mountains and becoming gods. The Yinsha blessed land was given to Dong Gu, who was the first disciple, but in this case, it became a headache to know what to give to Zuhaifeng Su Shaoqiao and Hengshanfeng Xiaoling, who were both direct descendants. Especially when Su Shaoqiao accepted a direct disciple, Li Xinyuan, Ruanqiong became even more worried. A sect that can possess both heaven and earth is a beautiful thing that everyone dreams of. Before the 2 juniors on the mountain, the Longquan sword sect and the Luopa mountain, only Shengao's sect had accomplished this feat in Aquarius continent. Tianjun Qizhen also controlled the Qingtan blessed land and an unknown island that was not listed in the official list. Named Dongtian. The beauty of the cave lies in some kind of unexpected joy that can be encountered but not sought. For example, some Dao auras that come from nowhere and are completely traceless. Another example is that the fragments of a golden body that have been washed away and precipitated by the long river of time may even emerge from an ancient treasure that has been tempered by time and become natural and flawless. Therefore, as long as a monk owns a cave, it is equivalent to having an extra to reward rice. Eat the golden rice bowl. Lu Xianyang said, "There is a magical function in this paddy field cave. It is a doorway that I discovered by myself not long ago. Sitting on the edge of the field, looking at the reflection in the water, and then visualizing myself, it is very suitable for practicing swordsmanship in a dream, and you will get twice the result with half the effort." Tai Jiangwan guessed that Old Man Yang had a better treasure that could match my ancestral sword scripture, but Old Man Yang was reluctant to take it out. If I had known earlier that I would become the second master of Longquan's sword sect, the backyard of Yang's pharmacy is my second home. Gu Kanpai smiled and said, "What are you regretting? You just need to go and establish a good relationship with Li Huai. Maybe you will get unexpected gains." Lu Xianyang rubbed his chin. "I'm not familiar with him." Gu Kan said, "Chen Pingan is very familiar with him." Lu Xianyang laughed loudly. "You are so jealous, it makes no sense." Gu Kan asked, "Have you ever heard of the illusion of Rinjubao mirror?" Lu Xianyang nodded and said, "When I was studying in the Chuanruchen family, I glanced at a certain Jiguai Zongzao, but I didn't pay much attention to it. It seemed to be called Flying Spirit, which was regarded as ancient by knowledgeable people. Something forged by a certain Dayue Daoist." "Why do you ask this?" Gu Kan gave a thumbs up and pointed to the room. "It's just inside." Lu Xianyang rubbed his hands and said, "Brother Gu is kind." Gu Kan said, "Master said that the credit month has a good origin, and she has the best chance of becoming the predecessor of the bright moon. Lu Xianyang immediately reprimanded, "Insolent. There are no rules. You can call my sister-in-law's name casually." Gu Kan remained silent. Lu Xianyang was silent for a moment, and said calmly, "She is who she is, and she doesn't need to be anything else. If she wants to, I will help her. If she doesn't want to, no one can force her to do anything, and no one can talk to me about benevolence, justice and morality, the importance of interests and so on. Jing Juzhong is no exception." Gu Kan smiled and said, "It can be seen that Master is just kindly giving you a warning to prepare for a rainy day, so that you don't want to be kept in the dark when things happen." Lu Xianyang immediately clasped his fists and said loudly, "Mr. Zheng is so righteous, I have so much respect for you." Gu Kan rubbed his eyebrows. Lu Xianyang shuddered and looked strange. "What's strange is that from beginning to end, I never called Jing Juzhong by his first name." Gu Kan smiled and said, "Why, Master chatted with you." Lu Xianyang said seriously, "Mr. Zheng praised me for being young and promising, responsible and ambitious." Gu Kan smiled and said, "As long as you are happy." He stood up. "Just didn't close the door." Lu Xianyang stood up and asked strangely, "With the door open like this, are you really not afraid of attracting thieves? It is difficult to guard against domestic thieves. I, Lu Xianyang, have a limited Taoist mind and I can't control myself any time. Don't blame me for not keeping a close eye on you. I'll learn from Chen Pingan's way of letting go when things go well for you." Gu Kan left straight away and said with a smile, "They are all your belongings to begin with. I don't know why I'm going to pick them over and over again, but I'm borrowing something so close to me. Is it fun? Isn't it embarrassing?" Lu Xianyang was stunned for a moment, stamped his feet lightly, and asked with a tentative smile, "Is that possible?" Gu Kan said bluntly, "It's yours too." Lu Xianyang raised his arms and shouted, "Brother Gu is not stingy." Gu Kan turned her back to the guy, raised her arms and raised her middle finger. "Some people don't ask for a full glass of wine, but ask for a refill." Arriving at the formation hub of the Liuxia boat, Gu Lingyan, who was in charge of the helm, changed his attire, with snow-white skin and long black clothes. With her beautiful eyes looking forward to it, she asked, "Master, have you really thought about choosing a location for the sect on Fuyao Island?" Today it was rare that Gu Kan was willing to chat with her for a few more words. Fuyao continent belongs to a new chessboard and a new chess game. In fact, it can display its tricks better than Tongye continent. The old sect's power was wiped out by the wild monster clan. If it is said that it will be the sect was built in the barbaric world, Fu Qi can do it, but Gu Kan in the Yupu realm is not qualified for the time being, so I won't pretend to be fat. Besides, the master's entrustment of the entire Jinsui city to me is also a clear indication. I don't think well of others, otherwise my master will move Golden Suiqing to Hauran world, and I will turn around and return to the wild world. What's the matter? What's more, my years in Fuyao Island were not in vain. There are a lot of people who accuse me of being arrogant, but not many of them say that I am a bad person. Even if they heard about some of what I did in Shujian Lake in Aquarius Continent in the early years, they thought it was nothing. Probably because they felt that compared to the wild monster clan the raging rampage in Fuyao Continent is indeed far behind. Chen Qing, Su Bai, and the others have to accept my feelings and can no longer regard me as a vicious person. In fact, if it were not for Chao Ci, we would most likely the whole army will be wiped out, but because he is Chao Ci, many people take it for granted deep down in their hearts. It is natural to be grateful to Chao Ci, but it is not necessarily true to say how grateful they are to him. This is how Chao Ci eats Chao Ci. Gu Kan, who did not have high expectations, instead took advantage of Gu Kan. She smiled and asked, "The plan is such a calculation and the truth is so many reasons. Does the young master have any selfish motives? Gu Kan nodded and said, yes. She said curiously, I would like to hear the details. Gu Kan smiled and said, Fuyao continent seems to lack a character like Qin Pingan did to Aquarius continent. Gu Lingyan pretended to have a sudden realization. Her cheeks were flushed like a naive girl, and she said shyly, young master, I have a small wish. If I can reach the Ascension realm, can you grant me one thing? Gu Kan smiled and said, as long as you reach the Ascension realm, I will lie still and ride as you please, galloping as you please. She said with a serious look, you have agreed, and you are not allowed to go back on it. Gu Kan nodded and said, you remember to learn a few more Taoist techniques. This made her a little discouraged. There are too many experts in the 9 continents of Hauran and the divine continent of Middle-earth, and no one dares to say that he is the leader of the immortal master on Izhou Mountain. Even if Fu Lu Yushuan reaches the 14th realm, this will still be the case. Even Bai Yi, the most proud man in the world back then, would not think so. But the other 8 continents are very talkative. For example, Pa Di Feng Huolong Jinren is recognized as the leader of both black and white in Luzhou, Beiju. Lu Jubao from Aizu replaced Wei Shi, the master of the 72 peaks, in his early years. In Nanposu Island, there was once the mellow Confucian Chen Chunan who carried the sun and the moon on his shoulders. But now he has become Qi Tingji of the Dragon Elephant Sword sect. Tongyi's Hao used to be Du Mao, the Ascension realm of Tongya sect, but now he is Wei Ying, the great sword immortal of Jade Gui sect. He did it reluctantly, but in fact he could not really convince the public. The status of Jing Hao, the Tai Bao of Qing Palace, as the leader of the mountain on the bright side of Liuxia continent is also a fiction. The real owner of Qinggong Mountain is Qin Qinglu. For Fuyao continent and Jinjia continent, no leader of either continent said this. In Aquarius Island, the whereabouts of Lu Yen, whose Taoist name is Chunyang, are still unknown, and he is still not well known, so he does not support the scene and belongs to the outside world. If we don't talk about cultivation and just talk about face, someone who serves as the new national advisor of Dili with the identity of the last hidden official of the Sword Qi Great Wall is considered acceptable. Gu Kan put his hands on his sleeves and said, learn Taoism in Baidi City and be the best in Fuyao continent. She blinked her eyes and said in a soft voice, young master, it seems you are not crazy enough. He is just the number 1 person in Fuyao continent. Gu Kan twitched the corner of her mouth, with a smile on her face that was extremely unrestrained. One day in the future, Ziwu Meng, named Chen Xiao, will feel that it was a great honor for her to decide to be a low-key personal maid for Gu Kan, especially for someone like you. The best choice I have ever made in my life, bar none. She stretched out her hand and patted her conscientious tall chest gently. Sir, to be honest, I don't think it's a great feat. It's far from the point of being so crazy. Gu Kan intertwined the fingers of his hands in his sleeves and said in a deep voice, no matter how far Chen Pingan walks on the road from now on, I will walk side by side with him. No matter how high he stands on the mountain top in the future, Gu Kan will stand side by side with him. Gu Lingyan smiled and narrowed his smart eyes. Young master, are you confident that one day, in the near future, you will reach the 14th realm? The young man in Confucian shirt smiled softly and said, well, see. On the top of a mountain in the wilderness, an old man wearing a bamboo crown looked up at the sky, opened his mouth wide, and made no sound. He just beat his chest gently, one after another. It seems that if this is not the case, you will be out of breath. The old man cried with joy and tears, silently feeling the strong luck rolling in between heaven and earth. 14. This is 14. There is no unstoppable path for man, and it has been 10,000 years, and he has finally reached this level. Previously, Chen Qinglu visited Baidi City and had a few heart-to-heart conversations with his good disciple Jing Juzhong. It involves which wild monsters are most likely to take that step and be the first to reach the 14th realm. According to Jing Zhezhong's calculation, the answer he gave was extremely unexpected. In order, they were Wang Youwu with the Taoist name Tiger, Li Gua, Bai Jing, and Wumingxi. Just as Jing Zhezhong expected, the first great demon in the wild world to successfully merge with the Tao was this beauty who was least favored by others. Wang Youwu didn't bother to wipe her tears, stood up slowly, clasped her fists high, and said loudly, "Show me, thank you." In the vast world, in the Lu clan ancestral hall in Azu, in the courtyard of Sisui Guitang, Lu Kaishan stretched out his hand to catch the rain. He stood here for many days. It is natural for merchants to make money. Lu Jibao's road to harmony can be divided into two lines, one of which is relatively simple, which is spending money. Successfully join the Tao and reach the 14th realm. It is finally no longer impossible for Azu to win back the word north from Beiju Luzhou. Qingming Tianxia, the co-sect master of Liangjingshan and Dachao sect, and a Taoist priest of Chaoga, Su Jun has repeatedly read the Su Wugui written by Master Bai Yu Jingla these days. When Su Jun turned to look out the window, it was already dawn. When he put down the book, Su Wan was in the 14th realm for no reason. Then the first ghost of the 14th realm appeared in the world. Su Jun couldn't laugh or cry about this. In the Western Buddhist country, Peng Yuanji, a swordsman from the Great Wall of Swords, has been following a disheveled monk who seems to have never been tonsured for so many years, and together they have sculpted 500 Arhat statues for the temple. In addition to this, the monk will also sit cross-legged in the corridor outside the temple, looking attentively, carving a Buddha statue of unknown material. For some reason, the monks carve statues in the hall during the day and outside the hall at night. They do not eat or sleep, and do not rest until they are haggard and exhausted, unwilling to rest. Peng Yuanji also asked the abbot of the temple, "How many years has this monk who never spoke a word been doing this?" The old abbot only said that it had been many, many years. Peng Yuanji asked again, "Is he practicing closed-mouth meditation?" The old abbot said that if it were not for the protection of the temple formation, every minute thought of that person would be like thunder from the sky. Peng Yuanji asked again, he had been carving Buddha statues outside the temple for so long, why didn't he carve the Buddha's face? The old abbot said that he was still looking for his true identity, and the Buddha statue he carved was none other than himself. Peng Yuanji couldn't help but ask, "Is it so difficult to become a Buddha?" The old abbot said he was afraid it would be even more difficult. Peng Yuanji finally asked a question, "What hair do monks have?" The old abbot said that it was all an obsession that he couldn't let go of. The more he cut off, the more he cut off, and the more he cut off, the longer it became. It has been raining heavily for several days, and the sky and the earth at noon are as dark as night. I wonder if it will stop for a few more days. Today, Peng Yuanji is sitting near the monk. He usually carves images outside the temple at night. Does the monk break his own precepts? Peng Yuanji never thought of copying the words in the book, hoping to help the monk a little bit. For example, why bother lighting a lamp during the day and why burn a candle in the middle of the day? After hearing such words, the monk would stop the carving knife in his hand, raise his head, smile at Peng Yuanji and thank him. Later, Peng Yuanji learned from the old abbot that the monk had read all the Buddhist scriptures in the world, and he could see all the recorded public cases. Peng Yuanji was suddenly startled. It turned out that the monk put down the carving knife in his hand and crushed the wooden statue into pieces. With his hands empty, he sat cross-legged, shook his head, and murmured, "It won't work after all." Peng Yuanji seemed to be infected by the sad mood of the monk. This swordsman who had been away from home for many years also felt a little depressed. The monk looked at the dim rain curtain outside the corridor, and soon felt relieved that he could not become a Buddha, and it was not that he had nothing to do. He clasped his hands together, lowered his head and sang a Buddha chant. The young-looking monk stood up slowly, turned around and walked towards the main hall, crossing the threshold with one foot. Pang Yuanji recalled for no reason the past years in his hometown. It was said to be a story written by Chou Miao himself. Only Chen Pingan had read it and said it was well written. Chou Miao said that he had nothing to do and spent his time writing casually. You have just read it. But after the young hermit official said so, the summer palace began to cheer, which made Chou Miao extremely sad. She regretted telling the story that had no ending at that time. Pang Yuanji now only remembers a few dialogues in the book. They are deeply remembered and unforgettable to this day. In the book, a monk whose ending seemed destined to become a Buddha asked a disciple next to him who seemed destined not to become a Buddha, "Disciple, while there is still daylight, we might as well continue on our way. One more journey through the mountains and rivers is one more journey. Master, there is no reason why we should not walk during the day and at night. Why not rest first? It won't be too late to start tomorrow morning. Disciple, we are traveling to the west to obtain Buddhist scriptures. How long do you think it will be before we can reach Mount Delying? Master, you have grown from childhood to old age. No matter how young you are, it will still be extremely difficult for you to go around 1,000 times. As long as you understand when you see your nature in your heart, when you turn around and look back, you will see the Buddha on the Lingshan mountain." The young monk retracted his foot, turned back to the corridor, and walked directly down the steps into the rain. Every time the monk took a step, his hair rustled down on his own, and a golden lotus appeared under his feet, filled with brilliance. When he stood still, the heavy rain stopped. Rest is Bodhi. Turn around and become a Buddha. A sword light as powerful as a rainbow came from near Fuyazu in Haorantianxia, and cut through the gap between Yuming with a sharp sword. The woman looked around and saw Zhou Qinghuang holding a sacred weapon. She went straight to the dojo where the ghosts who had achieved the Ascension realm abandoned themselves. The territory of Fengdu is vast, which is very different from the Yangjian. It is not just as simple as being separated by mountains and rivers, but there are hidden whirlpools of time everywhere. Ning Yao didn't say anything to Zhou Qinghuang and the kings of Infengdu palaces. He just stretched out a finger and scratched the center of his eyebrows, and the blood dripped like the eyes of the sky. She didn't even say harsh words to the candidate ghost of the 14th level. She just slashed it away with one sword. The world was densely packed with golden sword light, like trees and flowers, in all directions. The enemy and us who are inexplicably enmity are thousands of miles apart. The bright sword light has passed through countless time swirling places. The sword light follows everything like a shadow, and ghosts have no way to hide. They are all ghosts, and you still want to die, so let me die again. With just one sword strike, the ghost's head was chopped off. It was unclear whether it was swordsmanship, sword intention, sword technique, or kendo. The ghost and its true soul were blasted to pieces by the sword light. Ning Yao looked indifferent and just wiped away the blood between his eyebrows. The sword light dragged a long golden river, and the sword returned to its sheath with a clang. Zhong Kueizai, wearing a bright red robe, came here, stood beside Zhou Qinghua and the others, pretending to be calm, and laughed and said, "She is Chen Pingan's Taoist companion. Everyone knows about this matter, so there is no need for you, Zhong Kuei, to go out of his way to explain to us who she is." Ning Yao pretended not to hear Zhong Kuei's words, clasped his fists and apologized, "Try your best not to do this again." When it was confirmed that Ning Yao had left and returned to Haoran, Zhong Kuei said seriously, "Ning Yao is still my sister-in-law. I have received their wedding invitations, but you haven't." Zhou Qinghuang couldn't help laughing and asked, "Why didn't I hear the old scholar talk about this?" General Fan nodded and said, "That little nerd Pei Qian, as Chen Pingan's founding disciple, she doesn't even know about this. Brother Zhong Kuei, you can do it. Zhong Kuei didn't look embarrassed at all. He held his belt with both hands and just said to himself, "You may not know that as far as my friendship with Chen Pingan is concerned, at their wedding banquet, Ningyao had to toast not only 1 glass of wine to me, but also 2 glasses of wine to me. 1 cup is too few, 3 cups is not enough." Zhou Qinghuang asked, "Chen Pingan and Ningyao are talking about each other. Do you really think they can't hear you?" Zhong Kuei shut up immediately. Earlier in the 100,000 Mountains, the old blind man and Gon Tang said that there would be a lot of water among the monks in the new 14th realm in the future, but Ningyao was an exception. At that time, Gon Tang was actually doubtful. He felt that the old blind man was partial to Ningyao, so he said something casual. If this general worshipper of Luola Mountain had seen this scene with his own eyes, he would probably know that the old blind man's words were essentially without any water. There are 14 realms in the world. Ningyao casually slashed Fei Xing. Sword of Coming Chapter 1226. Chapter 1226 Husband, please raise your eyebrows. A speeding Liuxia boat spreads out the mountains, rivers, and land like a magnificent picture scroll. As soon as the ferry left the Beiyue boundary, Lu Xianyang shouted to Chen Pingan at the top of his voice. Chen Pingan, who was sleeping on the table, stood up and called Wei Bo by his name several times in his heart. He ignored him and walked out of the house, came to the bow of the ship, and called Wei Bo by his name again. Wei Bo soon appeared on the ship. In fact, when he heard the god's call, Wei Bo immediately breathed a sigh of relief in Piyun Mountain. This revenge for Chen Pingan has been brewing for many years, especially the one against Ma Kushuan. Become a god, because Wei Bo was in the Shinto, he was more worried than those who knew about this in Luopa Mountain, such as the old cook and Jing Dafeng. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was on tenterhooks. Chen Pingan had taken off his boots and was sitting cross-legged on the bow of the boat, shaking a red gourd. He didn't drink, but just listened to the sound of the wine sloshing around. Relieved, Wei Bo leaned against the railing and asked curiously, "Did the Jisa Peak Sword Room not receive the Feijin message from the Dali Xing department?" Chen Pingan said, "I received it. I have read it. I am too busy with business to bother to reply." Wei Bao was furious. Just because you didn't reply, the entire Dali criminal department had to carefully try to figure out the thoughts of you, the imperial preceptor. Even His Majesty the Emperor had to ask the rights department to send a message to Pianshan. So that he had to go to the penal department Yamen in person. What kind of thing is this? Isn't the Emperor anxious about the eunuchs? Chen Pingan forced a smile, shook his fists a few times, and apologized. One family doesn't speak the language of 2 families. Wei Bo asked, how to arrange them. Chen Pingan obviously had an idea and said, for the time being, let's put these 16 people in the Tiaoyu Mountain. Whether they are martial artists or monks, they are all in the same mountain. In a year or 2, if we really send another group, sword cultivators are still the same, there is no need to send them to the sword worship platform. No matter how big the Tiaoyu Mountain site is, just throwing 30 people into it is not a big deal. If I remember correctly, there are actually many ready-made buildings in the mountain, with large and small houses. There are more than 100 rooms, which is enough. And since it is close to Luola Mountain, I may also open Fuyao Lu as a personal dojo. It's actually easy to choose a person to teach boxing. Jing Dafeng has been teaching boxing at Bianhan Palace for many years in Wucai Tianxia. But the choice of preachers is a little embarrassing. Of course Chen Pingan can teach, but he is definitely not suitable. After all, it is not the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Here in Haoran Tianxia, the path of cultivation, whether it is practicing Taoism or learning boxing, if the starting point is too high, it will not be all good for this group of 16 people who are just starting out. As for the white-haired boy who is now the genealogist of Luola Mountain, it is actually said that she is a scholar and a heavenly person. It is not an exaggeration to say that she can also teach. But she has a special status and is still inappropriate. Wei Bo took out a booklet from his sleeve and recorded the detailed files of those 16 people. Unexpectedly, Chen Pingon shook his head and said, "I won't read it." Normally, Wei Bo would have complained a few words, something like throwing away the shopkeeper and pretending to be addicted. But looking at Chen Pingan's haggard face at this moment, Wei Bo could bear it and forget it. Chen Pingan said, "In addition to Jing Dafeng being responsible for teaching boxing, you can also let Xin Yuanji be his deputy. Teaching boxing to others and helping others to box is actually a kind of learning boxing in itself." Wei Bo was stunned for a moment, nodded and said with a smile, "Good idea." Wei Bo said, "Lu Yong and Jing Qingjia are both in the mountains." Chen Pingan asked in confusion, "What is Master Lu doing?" Wei Bo said, "Help Zhao Zhu get a guest status with your Luopa Mountain, the kind that has a seat in the Jisa Peak Patriarch Hall." Chen Pingan said helplessly, "This also requires Master Lu to travel across continents and visit Luopa Mountain in person. Is this a special trip to congratulate you and give you gifts?" Wei Bo laughed it off. Chen Pingan said softly, "She has an extra surname. Gu Lingyan, Xing Qingjia. For the monks of the Wild Demon Clan, adding a surname to oneself is not a joke. Her nickname is Yuanhu, and her nickname is Five Flowers Scholar. In the wild world, she is one of the few upper-level 5 monks who doesn't like fighting by nature, and of course is not really good at fighting." Wei Bo smiled and said, according to what she said, she recognized her ancestors with Mr. Xiaomo. The other thing is to find Gu Kan to return to the clan. Chen Pingan asked a strange question, did she go up the mountain alone? Wei Bo was puzzled, but he didn't bother to ask more, just one person. However, anyone who is in the Jade Pu realm will almost always have a trick up their sleeves. But how many people and objects can be carried depends on the skill. Chen Pingan asked no more questions. Because there is a big or small secret involved here. When Chen Pingan was guarding the city alone, there was once a chariot with a group of wild female cultivators, Ying Yen Yen, heading north just to take a look at the young hermit official from a distance. Among the chariots, in addition to the descendants of the great demon, there was a female cultivator with a genealogy who was born in Jinsui City. Where did Ma Kuxuan get so many gold and copper coins? From beginning to end of the fight, Chen Pingan never asked. In fact, after Ma Kuxuan was killed with a sword, this guy even gave up his soul at the last moment. It was obvious that he wanted to keep these gold and copper coins in the caged bird. Whether it was a relic that Ma Kuxuan couldn't take away or a trophy that was worth a battle, Chen Pingan confiscated it. Instead, Chen Pingan used these remaining gold and copper coins to help Ma Kuxuan open up a new path. In addition to protecting part of his soul and being reincarnated, he also helped Ma Kuxuan and his current body and the people he once belonged to. The connection with the divine way in the old heaven was completely disconnected. Chen Pingan separated a piece of his mind, entered the small world of caged birds, and came to the arch bridge at the foot of the immortal mansion ruins. His mind became one with the young Taoist priest. 3 figures arrived hand in hand, and Yu Shiwu asked directly, "What's going on?" In addition to Yu Shiwu, there are also the barbaric female cultivator Xiao Xing, and the Mafu cook Yu Qin, or the former cherry green Yi Gong Sun Lingling. Obviously it was not just Yu Shiwu, they were also curious about why there was such a big commotion, and there was a feeling of the world falling apart. During the fight with Ma Kuxuan, Chen Pingan was worried that there would be complications, so he detained the 3 Yu Shiwu here, temporarily losing their authority to travel freely between different worlds. Chen Pingan did not explain the detailed reasons, but just told Yu Shiwu a rough result. Yu Shiwu was stunned and speechless, and then murmured, okay, this is best. Xiao Xing originally wanted to make a sarcastic comment about how he could achieve great things with a soft heart. But before she could say anything, his body instantly fell into the long river and almost drowned. Gongsun Lingling was quite relieved by this. After all, the crazy was a wicked person. The next moment, Xiao Xing, who had regained his freedom, came out of thin air behind Gongsun Lingling, rubbed her ears and temples, and then pressed against her breasts. On the back, Xiao Xing quickly stretched out a white lotus root-like arm, wrapped it around Gongsun Lingling's waist, and suddenly lifted it up a little, grabbing a heavy weight on his chest. The young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown frowned slightly. Xiao Xing stopped, tiptoed a little, swept back, sat on the bridge railing, stretched out his hand to rub the top of a pillar, and said with a charming smile, "It's about the same size." Chen Ping ignored this and said, "Many illusory worlds are seriously damaged. I will have to thank you for your hard work to repair them." Xiao Xing's eyes were hot, and he looked at the cook's bulging waist and skirt, which was stretched out. The curves were amazing and full. She stretched out her fingers to touch her scarlet lips, and said delicately, "Master Yingguan, this servant and you can discuss something, why not reward her to me, and I will work with you wholeheartedly, and it won't take long to keep her and nurse her to be docile." Chen Pingon narrowed his eyes and said nothing. Although the sky and the earth are dark and unclear, a bright red color oozes out. Xiao Xing immediately knew how powerful it was, and kept silent, not daring to make any mistakes again. Heaven and man sense that if Qin Pingon is the well-deserved god here, then his mood fluctuations will be announced to the heaven and earth in different celestial phenomena. Qin Pingon looked at Gongsun Lingling. "If she dares to pester you again and delay your progress in creating a world full of gold and color, I will let her learn how to write the word regret." Gongsun Lingling said, "I can work here willingly, but I need a salary that has nothing to do with fairy money." Chen Pingon said curiously, "Tell me about it." Gongsun Lingling said, "If I can guarantee that she will not continue to pester me." Xiao Xing smiled brightly and was not afraid at all. "When the time comes, I will not wear clothes all day long, and it doesn't matter if I don't touch your body." Chen Pingon was speechless. Yu Shiwa's scalp was even numb. Gongsun Lingling said, "Then let me change my request. Instead, let me provide more of this thing, and let her have a period of time every day where she can't help herself." Chen Pingon said helplessly, "You all go and see the doctor. Before that, everyone should do their own thing and don't meet again. I will help you set up a layer of restrictions, so close and thousands of miles away." Yu Shiwu was stunned and frightened. Xiao Xing covered his mouth and smiled sweetly. "Yu Qing, sooner or later you will be unable to bear the loneliness and take the initiative to have with me." Chen Pingon remembered something and said, "Gongsun Lingling, I just met Xiao Pu and Lu Taoji in Chongyang Temple in the capital. In the future, when the time is right, I can help you restore your identity as Cherry Qingyi." Gongsun Lingling remained silent, clenching his fists and just nodded. Chen Pingon said, "Yu Shiwu, let's talk while walking." Yu Shiwu wished he could get away from those two girls quickly and follow Chen Pingon up the sacred road. On both sides of the mountain road, there was still the oozing scene of corpses hanging with horizontal swords. Compared to Xiao Xing and Gongsun Lingling, Yu Shiwu was the last one to enter Chen Pingan's state of mind dojo. As he became more and more familiar with the basics of this place, the more he admired Chen Pingan's construction methods. He was amazed and eye-opening. Especially when Chen Pingan handed him the Guan ultimatum and the hub, Yu Shiwu finally understood why Xiao Xing could describe everything in the world so quickly. He thought she was good at this and had a special talent. It turned out that Chen Pingan had already laid the foundation. Xiao Xing and Yu Qing only needed to select the components and put them together. For example, in a strange land that looks like the source of all laws, there are countless buildings of various types, dotted around, dense and orderly. Yushirwu, and they can control something at will. They can shrink it as small as a mustard seed or expand it like a star, depending on their own wishes. Just talking about Taoist temples, there are 62 Taoist temples and 81 temples in the script. The key is that each has its own characteristics. For example, we borrowed the statue of the 24 heavens from Tifo Temple, the statue of Lingguan from Lingshao Temple, the mural of Chaoyuan dynasty from the Chunyang Wanshou Palace, the Linggu Temple that closed the mountain gate on horseback, and the lifelike 500 wood sculptures from Jingxi Temple in Nanping Mountain. Arhat. In addition, there are 2 originals of Taoist temples and temples that have removed all features, similar to the carved mother coins used by the government to cast copper coins. The dismantled objects are of various types, such as plaques, couplets, and statues of gods. Murals, caissons, oil lamps, pillars, mortises and tenons, masonry. They are all divided into categories, formulated into high and low levels, and arranged according to the heavenly stems, earthly branches, etc. It is not just a simple patchwork, superposition and combination, but an establishment similar to Confucianism in a broad sense. A mere dharma is not enough for oneself, from the inner sage comes the outer king. A building as a whole can be dismantled into hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of fragmented and small partial components, and the 3 of them can just use them. That's why the Shao shape is created so quickly. Nowadays, the few of them are certainly adding to the number of things in the world, but in terms of difficulty, they are subtracting. Such fantastic ideas, such originality. Yushirwu no longer felt admiration or awe, but an instinctive fear deep in his heart. In addition, there is a clear spring on the top of the mountain. The spiritual energy is as thick as spring water. It is detained here and looks like a quiet pool. Anyone who feels tired can come here to drink water directly, meditate, rest, recharge and replenish spiritual energy. According to Shao Xing, so much spiritual energy from heaven and earth is equivalent to the spiritual energy reserve of an Ascension realm monk. When they reached the top of the mountain, the ground was paved with green bricks. Chen Pingan walked to the water pool and said for no reason, Ma Kushuan is a smart man, and he is also an awkward person. Regarding his natal flying sword, Ma Kushuan had already experienced it personally on the banks of the Dadu River. But Shou Mi, who was summoned by Ma Kuxuan's visualization, didn't know anything about it. There are actually many people who like to be at odds with themselves, others, and the world. For example, Lu Xianying never likes to say sorry to others. Another example is Song Jisun, who wanted to ease relations with his neighbors many times but was unwilling to take the initiative. Maybe Ma Kuxuan's awkwardness is that he refuses to talk to anyone properly, and refuses to ask for help even if he lives or dead. Yushirwu couldn't guess why Chen Pingan said this. Chen Pingan did not continue to talk about this topic. Yushirwu asked, Chen Pingan, do you really need external forces like us? Chen Pingan said resolutely, of course it is necessary. Yushirwu asked, why? Chen Pingan said, let a person eat braised pork for 3 meals a day. It's not enough if he doesn't eat it. How does it taste? Does it feel good? Yushirwu smiled and said, of course it's uncomfortable. Chen Pingan said, similarly. No matter how exquisite the mountains, rivers, and various buildings I have built, they can be a step ahead of you in everything, everyone, and everything. As long as you look at them too much and for a long time, there will be a feeling of boredom or even nausea. This kind of intuition is not very reasonable. So I need a few of you. Yushirwu sighed and said, I understand. Years ago, I have been pursuing the state of error-free. But one day, I discovered that certain errors are so valuable. Chen Pingan said slowly, someone needs to make mistakes instead of this world. The more mistakes there are, the more real and credible this world will be. Yu Shiwu praised, suddenly enlightened. If he could really get away from that disaster, Yu Shiwu would really want to go to Luopa Mountain to find a place, even if it was to be a janitor. Chen Pingan smiled and said, being the gatekeeper of our Luola Mountain is more difficult than having a seat in the Jisa Peak Patriarch Hall. Yu Shiwu felt helpless. Chen Pingan stretched out a palm and said with a smile, those gold and copper coins that are temporarily entrusted to you for safekeeping. Yu Shiwu couldn't stop laughing angrily. It's obvious that the property has been returned to the original owner, so why did it become something that was kept for someone else? If you cut off the road and steal money, just say so, why bother talking about borrowing money? Chen Pingan kept his posture unchanged, nodded and said, grab the money. Yu Shiwu took out a money bag from his sleeve and slapped someone's palm heavily. Take them all, more than 230. Chen Pingan said thank you. Yu Shiwu shook his head. Chen Pingan asked, fellow Daoist Yu, do you want to see a truth that is not the whole picture? Think about it before answering. Yu Shiwu said without hesitation, look. Why don't you look? I saw a Taoist tree standing in the middle of the sky and earth, with countless almost smallest ones hanging on it. Yu Shiwu was stunned and speechless. He could only be dumbfounded. He was really shocked beyond measure by the scene in front of him. It feels both majestic and stunning, but also terrifying and shuddering. This Chen Pingan, regardless of his ambition, he clearly wants to recreate the world. And it completely confuses the boundaries between truth and falsehood, fiction and reality. What you see when you take a quick look at flowers is ultimately scrawled, and you often know what is happening but not why. Many truths that reveal mysteries in the world, whether they are still scams or have become facts, will always make people feel nothing more than that. But when Chen Pingan only revealed the prologue of the whole truth, Yu Shiwu was already unstable. Chen Pingan, who was still dressed as a Taoist priest at this moment, laughed at himself. There are impure paths to follow. A mustard seed returned to Lu Xiaozhou's true body. Chen Pingan put his hand between his eyebrows. After a moment, he leaned on the back of the chair and slowly exhaled a breath. Chen Pingan took out a yellowing book from his sleeve, placed it gently on the table, and opened a page. It recorded a technique that the higher the monk's vision, the more he valued it. The sky and the earth are connected, and the mountain walls are connected. They are as soft as apricot blossoms and as thin as paper pages. I point my sword and quickly open the door, following the orders of Mr. 3 Mountains and 9 Marquises. Looking down at these words, Chen Pingan was a little dazed after a moment, so he had to look away and close his eyes to rest. In this old book, the front preface and the following pages had been torn out. In addition, several non-connected pages had also been torn out in the middle, totaling 5. However, by chance, Chen Pingan completed these 5 pages. This book is a ghost painting talisman that Li Huai gave to Chen Pingan at the Chinese Confucian temple. It was old man Yang from the drugstore who casually gave it to Li Huai. Li Huai then casually gave it to Chen Pingan, which was like giving help in a timely need. In her early years, the Empress Dowager Dolly received 5 offered to the court from the Liu family on Fulu Street. One page of them recorded a technique for breaking into a room through a wall. She has poor eyesight and is completely ignorant of the goods. She only regards it as a wall-penetrating technique. Chen Pingan, who was finally brought into the palace with Xiao Mo, got these 5 pages. Then Li Huai sent books. Going around in circles, it is truly a coincidence. Li Huai said that his head hurt from watching it, and he was not being polite. As for studying, Li Huai was just like what Mao Sai said in his comment, he is powerless, but he is better than diligence in studying. Chen Pingon obtained this extremely rare and ancient Taoist book. Although it did not last long, it helped him a lot in his subsequent road building. A lot of knowledge can be seen. Chen Pingon can even use the 4 words, "I point a sword," to combine this complete formula with swordsmanship. Pei Min, as Pei Min's unnamed disciple, Bird's Eye View Peak Lu Fang, and Lotus Root Hua Fu Di Jing Xan Zhai's fencing skills are closely connected, and even Chen Pingon guessed that Bai Shang, who was formerly Lu Yu in a small town, must have a killer weapon related to this fencing skills. Maybe in the future, when they meet on a narrow road, Bai Shang can kill him with 1 sword. Opening Chen Pingan's caged bird's restriction on heaven and earth is really as soft as an apricot blossom, as thin as a paper page, as the magic formula says. Bai Shang can easily pass through the wall and back with his sword, so Chen Pingan needs to take it easy and must be on guard. Bai Shang's hand. Chen Pingan also remembered a strange thing that he couldn't understand. He remembered that when he was an apprentice in a dragon kiln, he often went into the mountains with old man Yao to search for soil. Every time Chen Pingan climbed up, he could see a high mountain on the east boundary. But after Lizhu Cave fell from the sky to the ground, the mountaintop disappeared out of thin air. To be precise, the 2 mountains were lost together. The latter is called Shuangfeng Mountain, also called Poda Mountain, and Pingtu Mountain, about 50 miles away from this mountain, is also called Dongshan. Chen Pingan once asked Cui Dongshan about the whereabouts of these 2 mountains. Was it quietly moved away by someone with great supernatural powers, or was it someone who used the method of sealing the mountains to stay in place but be isolated from the world? Cui Dongshan didn't even no matter what happens, let the embroidered tiger take the blame and curse the old whenever he gets the chance, just for fun. Chen Pingan had a splitting headache when he had so many thoughts in his mind. He had to quickly put his thoughts to rest, raised his arms and made a fist, and gently tapped his forehead to suppress the small world of his body. Chen Pingan stretched his arms a few times, closed his eyes, and gently knocked the back of his head on the back of the chair. Bai Zai said that bearing the true name of the demon clan will be much easier when Chen Pingan reaches the immortal realm. It's really not a lie. Gu Kan stood in the corridor outside the door, hesitated for a moment, and then gently knocked on the door. When Gu Kan entered the room and closed the door, Chen Pingan still closed his eyes to rest and said, "You can ask if you want." Gu Kan sat across the table and asked, "Can you really erase the memory of a Qi practitioner?" Chen Pingan still didn't open his eyes, and said softly, "It's easy to deal with a nascent soul realm. For example, the old woman Puliu, and the demon monk Shao Xing hidden in the lotus root blessed land. It's not easy to deal with the Yupu realm. I need to spend a lot of money. Without energy and aura, the key is to be persistent, just like wrapping a spark with layers of thick paper. The stronger the Taoist heart of a Jade Pu realm monk, the bigger the flame." Gu Kan said in a deep voice, "Being able to deal with the nascent soul realm is enough to shock the world. If you can erase the key memories of a nascent soul realm at will and prescribe the right medicine, wouldn't you be able to deal with the inner demons and have a fundamental cure?" Gu Kan said, "You." Chen Pingan deliberately ignored the word "we," remained silent for a moment, shook his head and said, "Don't forget, the word I used at the beginning was cut off." Reaching out and scratching a mark on the table with his nails, Chen Pingan asked, "What do you use to fill this seemingly small but actually huge gap?" Just like cutting off a piece of flesh from a person, no matter how big or small, after all, it is not as simple as an injury healing and scarring, or a matter of making flesh from white bones. Chen Pingan said slowly, "Ordinary Qi practitioners, sect genealogy monks, and even many earthly immortals may not know the truth, but there is no reason for you not to know." Gu Kan nodded and said, "Everything we see, hear, eat, smell, feel sad, happy, and think is actually recorded in our souls one by one. It is difficult to realize it without knowing it. Chen Pingan said, "If you are a lady, you will know what you have witnessed." This sentence is generally used to describe geniuses. In fact, it can be regarded as a side note of memory, so don't interpret it. Speaking of talent, for example, Wang's son from Xuandu Temple in Qizhou under Qingming world. Gu Kan and Chen Pingan have such a tacit understanding. Isn't this misinterpretation a misinterpretation? Are you familiar with Lu Chen, or am I more familiar? Why are you holding grudges against me? Go hold grudges against that loudmouth Lu Xianyang. Why should I hold a grudge against a big mouth? I only care about small-minded people like you. Chen Pingan continued, secondly, whether it is Pu Lu or Xiao Xing, the memory of Chen Pingan to them is not deep, and the involvement is not extensive. It is relatively simple to cut it. This is why I will send them to one of the reasons you have in hand is not just to help you make things better. Once they stay with me for a long time, or stay in the Luoluo mountain to practice Taoism, they will almost completely lose the possibility of reaching the Jade Pu realm. I only talk about tampering with memories and deleting them. It is actually not too difficult to subtract one thing and add something else, and finally achieve the point where the fake is the real thing. The difficulty lies in being consistent with reason, context, and Tao. But with this method, we dare to hope to block all the disturbance of the inner demons of the monks in the nascent soul realm is nothing more than a fool's dream. We can only act in accordance with the times, and occasionally do it to some people. Doing so is tantamount to taking the initiative to bear a share of the cause and effect. Who among those who practice Taoism does not pursue a path without branches or vines? Those who want to do this cannot. Weak-hearted. Those who can do it don't want to do it. Powerful but unintentional. Chen Pingan had one more thing that he didn't tell Gu Kan. Are there two identical snowflakes in the world? Jing Juzhong said he had seen it. This means that Jing Juzhong can let any Yuanying realm monk enter the Jade Plane at will without any inner demons. Chen Pingan even suspected that one of the purposes of Jing Juzhong's retreat this time was to wait for the demon that could be regarded as the pseudo-15th realm and wait for it to come to Baidi City to discuss the Tao. Gu Kan said, I will try to establish the sect in April and arrive at Aquarius Continent on the first day of May. Chen Pingan asked in confusion, why are you in such a hurry? Gu Kan looked at him. Chen Pingan became more and more confused. Gu Kan pouted, thank you for being so smart. Chen Pingan laughed angrily and said, don't be too pretentious. Gu Kan said, Lu Xianyang plans to set the wedding on the 5th day of May. Chen Pingan was about to speak but stopped and fell into a long silence. With a hard face, he stood up, walked to the window, and looked outside. Gu Kan's answer was something Chen Pingan couldn't even imagine. Okay. Gu Kan also turned his head silently and looked towards the door. Tall boy, straw sandal boy, little slug. In the past, they often walked together on the field ridges, holding foxtail grass in their mouths. Maybe it was because their hometown was too small, their age was too young, and their vision was too small, so they did not dare to think too big about the future. Lu Taoji needed to immediately go across the continent to the main hall to cleanse the wronged, hand over Xiao Pu's robe, ask an expert to help peel off the cocoon, and carefully inspect whether there were any hidden traces. Before leaving Chongyang Temple, he told Xiao Pu to carefully protect Master Qing. He came to Aquarius Island this time to do 3 things: protect Master Qing for a period of time, spend the Yuan dynasty in Huzhou to practice in the mountains, and persuade Chen Pingan to serve as the chief guest of Xishan Jianin lineage. Xiao Pu asked, what should I do if the Yuan dynasty immortal is left alone for a few years to sharpen her skills? There are experts in the main hall who have long figured out that the Yuan dynasty immortal is a natural talent in the Golden and Jade Jungle, and must bring her back to the mountains from Aquarius Continent. Lu Taoji nodded and said, although there are 9 out of 10 catastrophes on the mountain, there is no way to escape them. However, as a Taoist cultivator, by refining his spirit internally and accumulating external skills, he can indeed weaken the catastrophe to a certain extent. She still needs more experience in the world of mortals. Xiao Pu said. Having said that, senior brother Lu cannot delay her best opportunity to practice Taoism. Lu Taoji said, I'm going to see her and teach her a swordsmanship first. Junior sister Xiao doesn't need to be tutored from the side. We go down the mountain to teach people as we go, while they go up the mountain to practice Taoism, but they have to do it themselves. Xiao Pu shook his head. I have gone through this calamity myself. Now I don't have the courage to do so. I just hide here. The middle-aged Taoist priest is already burly and powerful, so he feels extremely oppressive, especially for a woman of medium stature. Looking at him, he looks like a mountain. So Bao Shu was extremely nervous. When the other party gave her the Taoist book, regardless of whether she understood it or not, the middle-aged Taoist priest just explained it word for word, and her mind went blank. Zhong Shan, who was as tall and thin as a bamboo pole, went to a back alley in Changning County and ran all the way back to Chongyang Temple. When he met the old Taoist priest, the young man had a look of regret on his face and said, Bai Yun and his grandfather have moved. I asked the neighbors and they didn't know. When I went to find the person who rented the house to them, he also said that he had disappeared, only that his grandfather and grandson were in the house and left some scraps of money. The old Taoist priest stroked his beard and smiled and said, If you don't get it by fate, you can't get it if you ask for it. It's the same for you and your friend Bai Yun. Don't be sad. I'll know tomorrow if we can meet again. Zhong Shan hummed. Song Juchuan, a short Taoist boy, suddenly asked, Master Jing, have you ever heard of the term crane's breath? The old man sighed and said, How do you know this kind of Taoist terminology? Song Juchuan was stunned. Is it true? Qing Fengxian said with a smile, Of course, this sermon on the mountain is not popular, it is relatively unfamiliar. A teacher may know the saying crane breath, but ordinary Taoists may not have heard of it. Song Juchuan cursed endlessly, That guy is so evil. The old Taoist priest thought about it and decided to visit the ghost house in Zhugan Hutong in Yongjia County. He dipped it in the talisman water and used the eye purifying technique. As expected, he saw 2 branches of mugwort hanging at the door, but they were not close to the door. Not having the shame to keep it secret, the old Taoist priest gently knocked on the door, and soon a woman opened the door. She looked around and asked a strange question, Taoist Master Wu. Those who should have supported the coffin and carried the coffin have become new ghosts. There is no smoke for thousands of miles, the dead are like a mess, the corpses are exposed in the city and fields, and the heads belong to the Tao. The flying swallow returns in spring and nests in the forest. I never thought that Tonggishao would come back to life so quickly. I just asked the immortal masters on the mountain and the powerful men from all over the world to stop being so oblivious. Otherwise, so many people died, and their death was really in vain. Worry. Pei Qian took out a bottle of wine from something nearby and handed it to Cui Dongshan. Cui Dongshan waved his hand, Forget about drinking. I'll quit drinking today. Cui Dongshan immediately rubbed his hands and said, There are a few things that I want to report to Senior Sister Pei. First of all, I have met Yu Lu and you are welcome. Yu Lu is an open-minded person. I simply misunderstood that he was in the old Lu family. Over at the dynasty territory, he had seen the white clothes of his ancestor. The latter also gave him a box of elixirs, which were very precious. They were the 4th party known as the 100 Days to Immortality, written by Gu Xianjun, and this Lord Gu Xian is the one written on the talisman just now by Senior Sister Pei. Bai Shang's only disciple was Su Xian, the beggar who pestered He Xiaoyang. He soon became one of Yu Lu's helpers in establishing the country. Yu Lu, a thief, asked me if I could do it. I am a big man. When faced with such a problem, how can you say no? In addition, Wu Yi, the founder of Huangting Kingdom's Xiang Mansion, with the Taoist name Dongling, and the eldest daughter of the old Zhao Qing Longzhou, has already started to start over on the bank of the Ling River and start the mountain again. She has established the sect as the founder. If nothing else, the name of the sect should be Chunyang Mansion. She probably hopes that she can change one word in the future and become Chunyang's sect. The idea is good, and Wu Yi also has something, that is not much. Not long ago, my junior brother and Chao Qinglang brought those Tonggis Hao people who were willing to leave the Lotus Root blessed land and return to their hometown through a well connected to the Mirage city of the Daquan dynasty. Chao Qinglang found the emperor, that is, the sister Yao you are familiar with. The conversation was very good and the atmosphere was harmonious. Half of the Qi refiners and their descendants of the immortal family were willing to have a relationship with the Daquan Yao family. They lined up all night to talk to Yao Jin. After that, various secret treaties were signed, and now that we have a backer, we can rush back to restore our respective kingdoms, return the God Lord to his throne, seize territory, and so on. As a reward, the Daquan dynasty will give our Qingping sword sect a ship named Thunder for free. Car's cross-continental ferry. After hearing this, Pei Qian, who was just drinking silently, finally said, "Why does it belong to your Qingping sword sect? It must be discussed through the Luolu Mountain Patriarch Hall before it can be counted." Cui Dongshan sighed. Those words were like the swish of a flying sword that poked countless holes in my little senior brother's heart. Pei Qian raised the wine bottle in his hand and said, "Stop talking about it and keep talking about business." Cui Dongshan lamented, "Sad first, then cold, it will be double the damage." Pei Qian rolled his eyes. Cui Dongshan held the back of his head with both hands, swayed his legs, and said leisurely, "Over there in our blessed land, we have the very qualified female nun Sun Wanyan, Luo Fume, the direct disciple of Pei Xiang from the Fox Kingdom, and the swordsman who has just reached the Golden Realm. Chao Ni, Yuan Huang, who is determined to learn some boxing skills from my husband in Luopa Mountain, Wu Jiang, an unreliable but very reliable young hero, and He Qizhou, a female martial artist from Jiangzhou in Songlai Kingdom. They all, after completing the task of protecting the road, I feel that this opportunity is rare, so I am willing to go out and walk more, and have a long experience in Tonggis Hao. I guess they are all on their way to Yunyan country together. You don't know, where is Mr. Demugwin, with its miraculous preaching posture? I don't know how many men admire it and women admire it. Sir, he never makes mistakes. When it comes to the love between men and women, he is very clean and self-sufficient. He can't find any flaws, but I don't know how many mistakes he made. A woman's mind. The one who least misleads himself most misleads others. There's nothing you can do about it." Pei Qian grinned, and the words made sense. The woman she once called Sister Yao, the current Empress Yao Jinji, isn't she one of them? Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "As for our chief Zhou, who works hard and never complains, he is feeling panic now. Mr. Xiaomo, who may not be able to win the battle for the road for the first time, is holding back his breath and trying his best to prove himself. He brought 4 sword cultivators who emerged from the Lotus Root blessed land to Tongya continent earlier than Chao Qinglang Nai. Chief Zhou also took away a woman from the blessed land whose pseudonym was Su Jiaoqia and whose real name was Shao Xing. The dead man took a trip to Tianmu Academy. She and Wen Yuan, the headmaster of Tianmu Academy, worked together flawlessly and frightened many onlookers hiding behind the scenes." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "That's all for the time being. After the report is completed, I sincerely ask Senior Sister Pei to give instructions." Pei Qian just said, "I really want to travel with Master in Hauran, but I can't say it." Cui Dongshan laughed and said, so this is what I'm worried about. Pei Qian squinted and said, "Is it funny?" Cui Dongshan immediately put his fingers together and touched his mouth, shaking his head vigorously like a rattle. Pei Qian said, "Master asked me to send you a message. He already has a clue about the few barbaric remnants who disrupted the situation. He has a portrait in his heart, which is the barbarian swordsman with the pseudonym Daku. Master, please relax. Well, he has his own means, and if he has the opportunity to follow the clues, he might be able to find the Golden Core Realm Talisman Cultivator." Cui Dongshan followed the example of the white-haired boy and started to raise his arms and shout, "Sir, you are wise, you are martial, you are more invincible than the real invincible." Pei Qian said, "Ma Kuxuan is dead. The master was seriously injured. The long sword Yeo was broken into 2 pieces, and the robe that carried the demon clan's true name was also torn. As a result, the master left for a jade journey. The Chongyang temple in the capital of Xian Kingdom was injured again for some reason. Master told me not to worry, but I really want not to worry, but I can't help but worry." Cui Dongshan nodded. Pei Qian said, "Master, in this retreat, in addition to ascending to the immortal realm, he also returned to the final level of the true realm." Cui Dongshan hesitated for a moment and asked curiously, "This is a good thing. Why do you still look frowning?" Pei Qian remained silent and did not drink. Cui Dongshan said, "In the outer world, I am helping the Li Xing and cooperating with those experts who are as tall as they can be to prevent the 2 worlds from colliding. I am responsible for presiding over the formation, and I am very good at weakening the physique of martial artists, so I will follow Qi. It is actually a matter of course to be able to prosper and return to one's true nature." Pei Qian said dully, "Master did not pass away as the strongest." Cui Dongshan grinned and said, "This kind of thing cannot be forced. If it is, it is, and if it is not, it is not. What's more, now the 2 worlds of Howren and Wilderness are connected, and it happened to be a rare rain period in 10,000 years. What? Weird people and things will pop up. It's a pity that you didn't get the title of the strongest, sir, of course, but it won't make you so depressed, senior sister, right?" Pei Qian stared into the distance, wondering whether he saw yesterday and the day before yesterday, or whether he wanted to see tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Cui Dongshan shook his head and shoulders, shook his sleeves, and said, "Sister, don't worry, the who stole your master will be found by me sooner or later. When the time comes." Cui Dongshan woke up suddenly as if someone had strangled his neck and couldn't say a word. Slowly turning his head, Cui Dongshan asked tentatively, "Senior sister, could it be that?" Pei Qian nodded and said, "It's my fault." Cui Dongshan even scratched his head and didn't know how to speak. If it were someone else who said such words to Cui Dongshan in person, Cui Dongshan would jump up and act like a big-mouthed person. "Who are you? What a scallion! You dare to say such big words? A martial artist at the level of the small end of realm. Are you sure that you have robbed my husband of his martial arts fortune? I don't know how high the world is, how many times have I been the strongest, how many martial arts gifts have I obtained?" The answer turned out to be Pei Qian. So Cui Dongshan was a little confused. Pei Qian said softly, "I originally thought it would be a small surprise for Master, but now it's fine. I really am a loser, right?" Even if Cui Dongshan had hundreds of reasons in his heart, he didn't think he could convince Pei Qian that he didn't have to do this. It's totally useless. So Cui Dongshan had no choice but to use a useless method. He put his palm to his mouth and called his husband by his first name, whispering, "Chen Pingon, Chen Pingon." Pei Qian was furious, turned around and glared, "Big white goose, are you seeking death?" In an instant, Chen Pingon seemed to know about the matter through Cui Dongshan's complaint, and without hesitation, he immediately used some kind of magical power to temporarily release the white-clothed god, and spoke to his disciples from afar with his heartfelt voice, his tone difficult to conceal. His face was full of smiles. "It would be shameful if I didn't tell you earlier. I'll save the chestnuts for now. Without further ado, I'd like to teach Master a lesson for a certain proud student who has committed a treasonous act." Cui Dongshan felt extremely aggrieved and wailed, "Sir, you are happy and senior sister is relieved. Am I the only one who is not a human being inside and out? Ah." The series that followed were actually prepared by Cui Dongshan in advance and deliberately complained to his husband. But Big White Goose didn't expect that the senior sister didn't take action. Cui Dongshan, who was a little embarrassed for the first time, scratched his face. It was overheated and he made a mistake. Pei Qian raised his head and took a sip of wine, raised the back of his hand to wipe the corners of his mouth. His whole demeanor changed completely, his expression was no longer gloomy, and he said with flying eyebrows, "Senior brother, thank you." Cui Dongshan took advantage of her good mood and said with a smile, "In addition to Yu Xuanfu and Lu Suiyu, Lu Yuzhou is also in the capital." Pei Qian twitched the corner of his mouth. "On my master's side, I can pretend not to hear certain hidden meanings. As for you, Big White Goose, if I don't hide and hide, it's not because Lu Yuzhou likes me. What a big deal. What he likes has nothing to do with me, Pei Qian. Now that a girl is older, she must get married. Even if she becomes an old girl, so what? In this world, there is already a master, and she has a career to go." Cui Dongshan clicked his tongue and said, if Lu Yuzhou knew what senior sister was thinking, he didn't know whether he should be grateful that he didn't have to be put in a sack, or whether he would be so sad that his liver and intestines would clench into knots. Pei Qian showed her signature smile. Cui Dongshan immediately changed his mind, jumped up, patted his belly, laughed and said, "The jejunum is roaring like thunder. I invite you to eat snails. Hot pot is also available. Let's go, let's have a midnight snack." Pei Qian stood up and said, "Let's go to Tongyin Ferry." Cui Dongshan pecked the rice. "Senior sister, you don't know, now me the sword immortal is so cool, and the limelight is unprecedented. Let's ride the wind together to Yulindu." Yunnan country is located in the middle of Tongye continent. It is a small country with a basin situation and a land in the palm of your hand. Although he was not a vassal of any dynasty, the only things he could get away with were the name of the vinegar city, barley wine and ink making. But now it is the most prestigious country in the entire Tongye continent. The Yunyan Qin family temporarily built a fish-scale ferry to facilitate the travel of immortal masters on the mountain. When the Feng Yuan ferry docked here, Miyu, who did not leave home, just stood by the boat railing by chance. There were whispers one after another on the other side of the ferry, obsessed and blurred eyes, excited faces, and even there was the woman's scream. They worked tirelessly to wait and see, just to see Shangmi sword ferry from a distance. This makes Miyu very annoyed. Just those women from wealthy families in various countries. You are all cultivators. You shouldn't be so motivated by sex, right? Nowadays, there are not a few women who are fighting for Miyu, and their number is increasing, and they can almost form a gang in the capital of Yunnan Kingdom. As the chief worshipper of Qingping sword sect, Miyu, Mi the sword immortal, did not have a place in the temporarily established ancestral hall. The position was given to a young man named Chao Qinglang from Jingxing Peak. They thought about it and found only one reason. Probably this was the unique state of mind of a Sandan sword immortal. Thinking of this, they fell in love with the noble Mi Lang even more. They really couldn't imagine what kind of wind Mi Jianxian was on the top of the great sword Qi wall, who lived alone all year round, sleeping drunkenly in the clouds and clouds. The Qingping sword sect, which is a sect under the Luo Luo mountain and a dragon crossing the river, has Mi sword immortal in command. If we don't activate the mirror flowers and water moon, wouldn't it be a waste of natural resources? It's hard for us, Mi Lang. No wonder Mi Jianxian, the beautiful tree facing the wind, could not hide his desolate look every time he saw her before. Mi Yes, true mentality couldn't be simpler. I'm just a loser. I can't do it, I don't deserve it. One of the conditions Feng Shuatao put forward at that time was that he was a wild cultivator and a man. In the blessed land of Yunku, a woman must serve him every day to warm Feng Zuido's bed. It's quite reasonable. Since he can hang out with Jiang Shangjin, a promiscuous and lewd thief who has a mother-in-law in every village, it's strange that Feng Shuatao can't speak so well. In his hometown of Aizu, Feng Shuatao had never been so miserable even after being a wild cultivator in Shanzi for so long. Even if he didn't take his reputation seriously, he still couldn't be completely shameless. Of course, Miyu heard these gossips and was very happy. However, the person involved was sitting across from him drinking, so he still had to be polite and polite. He borrowed a lesson from the young people at the summer palace. Look at the two words freedom on the paper. How you write this word will tell you whether you are free or not. Feng Shuatao nodded and picked up the wine bowl. This is a good saying and it is worth leaving. Miyu raised the bowl and clinked it with it. Then they both finished their drinks and said, my Taoist friend Yu Lao Qing has made more trips to that matter. Regarding the excavation of Dadu, from the early alliance to the establishment of the ancestral hall on the day when the second dragon raised its head in February, the early progress can be said to be smooth and a good start. Unexpectedly, a stick appears and smashes the talismans, causing people to lose heart. Whether you are asking for money or just to make ends meet, you cannot risk your life. For this reason, Miyu, two old sword cultivators from his hometown, Xing Yun and Lu Shuai, as well as Huang Ting from Taiping Mountain, the immortal named Long Men from Taishu Mountain in Middle-earth, and even Qing Tong from Jinyao Tower secretly moved out. In the end, Huang Ting was the only one who bumped into that guy by chance. Even so, Huang Ting still couldn't kill him on the spot. The other party's good luck is what is most hateful and terrifying. Two figures floated down beside the table, and Miyu quickly stood up to greet them. Pei Qian cupped his fists and smiled, Chief Mi, Senior Qing Mi. Feng Shuatao nodded with a smile and returned the greeting. I have met Grandmaster Pei and Sect Master Cui. Pei Qian took out a cotton parcel from something nearby, handed it to Miyu, and explained, Xia Mili asked me to give it to you. It contains dried fish, melon seeds, and preserved fruits. Miyu was in a good mood, and the gloom in his heart was swept away. If sect leader Cui hadn't been present, Sword Immortal Mi would have really wanted to resign as the chief minister of Qingping Sword Sect tonight, kill first and then report, and rush to Luopa Mountain tomorrow. Are you scolding me for being a loser? Just scold me and promise not to talk back. When will I, Miyu, be able to shoulder heavy responsibilities anyway? Cui Dongshan smiled and stretched out a palm to pat Mi Dajiangxian's shoulder. Mi Dajiangxian is a man of great talent but little use. The burden on his shoulders is still light. Miyu didn't even know how to reply. Cui Dongshan said with a playful smile, Fortunately, Sword Immortal Mi is one of our own and is reluctant to scold me. Otherwise, if I were in my shoes and scolded him, I would definitely say something like, the young man is so handsome, but it's a pity that he is not mute. If I don't knock the out of you with my sword, it means you haven't had enough. Miyu was Miyu after all. Holding the package, he was still in a good mood. Except for Mr. Yingguan, if anyone can disgust me with words, it means I haven't cultivated my mind enough. Cui Dongshan shook his palm towards Miyu and said with a smile, Chief Mi, I'll give you a holiday. It'll be over for a month. You are allowed to go back to Shangzong and find Xiaomi Liwan. Miyu was overjoyed, seriously. Cui Dongshan asked, if you don't mean it, how about you pretend it's false? Miyu smiled and said, if you take it seriously, you must take it seriously. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, I still want Zhang Shangzhen, does it rhyme? Pei Qian reminded, it's almost done. Cui Dongshan put his fingers together and muttered something. After a while, 2 chairs came swaying and stopped beside the table. Pei Qian put his hand on his forehead, but he really couldn't see. I don't know who among the younger generation of Lizhu Dongtian first put forward the idea, and they are gradually recognized by the world as the opening generation. As the founding disciple of the young Yinguan, an extremely young Zijing grandmaster who was able to become famous in Jinjiazu early, Pei Qian was certainly among them, and at the forefront. As soon as Pei Qian sat down, he stood up again and said, I want to go to the Lotus Root blessed land. Cui Dongshan blinked. About to break through. Pei Qian nodded. Break the situation. In the lonely mountain, the boy in green and the girl in black were not sleepy. They were sitting on the stone table on the other side of the bamboo building, eating melon seeds. The 2 sides bumped melon seeds together, like wine bowls, and then nibbled melon seeds. In the house where the door was never locked, the old cook was lying on a wicker chair and had a dream. He saw a butterfly standing on a phoenix hairpin, or it might be stuck on it. At the foot of the mountain, Jing Dafeng spent the long night alone, unable to sleep, scratching his head and head, thinking that he couldn't do it. He was so skilled at playing hard to get, could it be that the tricks written in the book were all lies? The Taoist priest Xianwei next door was reading at night in his study. It was a very serious Taoist book, and it was also a book that very few Xianwei could understand. The Taoist priest occasionally dipped his fingers in saliva and gently turned the pages. The Taoist priest and the words in the book felt like old friends at first sight. On a liuxia boat, Chen Pingan was lying on the bed, sleeping deeply and snoring like thunder. Even his sleeping posture was so regular, with his hands folded on his abdomen, his lips pursed subconsciously, and his brows frowned slightly. Ning Yao was sitting on the edge of the bed. She blushed slightly, twitching her eyelashes. She murmured something, stretched out her fingers, and stretched her brows for him gently. Sword of Coming Chapter 1227. Chapter 1227 Weird Mountain God and Alien. It was rare for Chen Pingan to be so free both physically and mentally. He slept until he woke up naturally and had a solid sleep. Darkness and dawn only last one night, and I don't know how many flowers bloom and fall in the world. When he woke up, he noticed that on the corridor outside the house, someone's face was pressed against the door, and Gukan was standing against the wall. This made Chen Pingan burst into laughter. You two are protecting the formation, and I am not in retreat. Chen Pingan suddenly opened the door, and Lu Xianyang fell into the house. Gu Kan looked strange. Chen Pingan smiled and said, how can there be so many assassinations, and I am a vegetarian at the level of my final state? Gu Kan's expression was even weirder. Lu Xianyang stood up and patted his sleeves. Be careful, Chen Pingan, you are still not experienced enough in the world. Let's go. Gu Kan finally couldn't help but say something fair. After you fell asleep, Ning Yao came to Liuxia boat and suddenly appeared. We didn't notice the slightest movement, but she took the initiative to say hello to us. Only then did we know she had arrived, but we didn't know when she left. Lu Xianyang walked quickly out of the house, but Chen Pingan reached out and held his shoulder. He came to the corridor like a cloud and mist. Gu Kan also wanted to trick Lu Xianyang and ran away. Chen Pingan also grabbed his shoulder. Why are you running away one by one? Since you are righteous and confident, you have no guilty conscience, and you are not afraid of being misunderstood by me. Both of them were hugged by Chen Pingan's neck, and they walked together in the corridor. They smiled and said, you are such a good brother, and I am deeply moved. Gu Kan said, I just arrived not long ago. Lu Jianxian probably listened to Chang Zhen all night. Lu Xianying cursed, what the hell, I'm just here with my front foot and you're here with your back foot. If I don't come, how dare you come? I'm here, are you willing to come? Gu Kan smiled and said, it makes sense, everything you said is right. Walk to the corridor and come to the bow of the ship. Gu Lingyan stood timidly on the deck, with the wind blowing and his clothes swaying to one side. His figure was graceful and his curves were exposed. Gu Kan frowned and asked, if you don't steer the Liuxia boat, why do you come here to drink from the northwest wind? Gu Lingzhan was so wrong that he hurriedly told them from the bottom of his heart, Ning Yao came to me last night. She asked some secrets about the monks in the wilderness. Finally, she asked me to send 2 sentences to Chen Yingguan. The first sentence is according to the established for the route, go to Fuyao Island. In the second sentence, Ning Yao only has 4 words, has killed the ghost. Because Chen Pingan was mentally weak before and did not review the attack on Chongyang Temple with the 2 of them, they were all a little confused when they heard the 4 words passed by Gu Lingxian. Chen Pingan had no choice but to give them a rough explanation of the reason. Previously, in Chongyang Temple, there was a candidate ghost of the 14th realm that had reached the Ascension realm. Because it had been blocked outside the threshold of the Hedao for too long, it wanted to take a path to save money. External skills, relying on the shortcut of perfecting Yinda and breaking through the realm, using the body and robes of a cherry green-robed ghost in Chongyang Temple, going against the path, as a crossing across the dark and bright, setting a great ambition to declare to the underworld, to avenge all the wild ghosts who died on the Great Wall of Sword Chi and Howren world, it would kill Chen Pingan. As a result, I didn't escape, but when I carried it, it fell into the air and leaked its traces. The Zhou city god of Middle-earth rushed there immediately in the underworld. I don't know how Ning Yao went to the underworld and how he killed ghosts. Lu Xianyang stretched out his hand and patted Chen Pingan's belly, that's strange. Remember, your kid is fine just by beating his stomach. He rarely eats bad things. Why is it that as soon as he leaves his hometown, he becomes acclimatized? He can't eat brown rice, but can only eat fine grains. Already. Gu Lingyan was once again impressed by Sect Master Lu. How dare he eat soft rice in front of Chen Pingan? Gu Kan asked in a deep voice, in the underworld, kill a 14th realm candidate ghost? How did Ning Yao do it? Lu Xianying chuckled and said, this is a very disrespectful question. Besides being a pure swordsman cultivator and entering the 14th realm, can you find a second reason? Gu Kan just looked straight at Chen Pingan. Guesses are guesses, but Chen Pingan has to give the answer to the truth. Chen Pingan nodded. Gu Kan sighed, no matter who it was, competing with Ning Yao for talent in cultivation, it seemed that there was no genius in the world. After Gu Lingyan learned the truth, he was terrified. It's not a lie, it's just because her face can change in thousands of ways. At this moment, her face is Ning Yao in her heart. She tried her best to stabilize her heart, stretched out her hand and wiped her face vigorously, and then her appearance returned to Ziwu Meng's appearance. When Gu Lingyan visited Howren this time, he was not so afraid of the hidden official Chen Pingan because Gu Kan was there, not to mention that she had never participated in the attack on the Great Wall of Sword Chi and had not even set foot in the world of Howren. Chen Pingan couldn't just do it because she was a wild man. Monster clan, just kill her with one sword. But Ning Yao, a 14th level sword cultivator and the #1 person in the colorful world, killing a Yupu level monk with a barbaric base, isn't it just a joke? Lu Xianyang touched Chen Pingan's head and let out a series of tuts. There's no such thing as an overnight grudge. My sister-in-law has already avenged you. Gu Kan didn't want an outsider to know more about the inside story, so he asked her to return to the center of the ferry and continue steering. Gu Lingxian was eager to do this, so as not to be frightened and disturb his Taoist mind. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "The second time I returned to the Guasian level, I didn't get the expected gift of martial arts." Lu Xianyang asked doubtfully, "I have lost something that should have been within my reach. I feel extremely disappointed. Do I have to force a smile on my brother's side?" "There is no need. Just cry and let the brothers be happy." Gu Kan asked, "This shouldn't be the case. In this level of qi, you are the most confident and the strongest. Only in this level, Chao Ci has no advantage." Chao Ci's martial arts qualifications are of course better than Chen Pingan's, but he is very energetic and pays attention to a lot. Because Chao Ci's qualifications are so good, it is easy to underestimate them and miss them. As it turns out, this is indeed the case. Chen Pingan smiled from ear to ear and said slowly, "So when I came out of seclusion and came out, I was also very strange. I mistakenly thought it was the fate of the world. Strange people and strange things happened frequently. Some people got some great opportunities, such as being raped by an expert. I took a trip along the river of time and the like, and saw thousands of years of time and thousands of mountains, and then I was able to work hard at this level and become better than me, so I didn't think much about it. I started from last night. Cui Dongshan knows the answer to the mystery, and it turns out to be Pei Qian." Lu Xianyang slapped Chen Pingan on the head. "You're showing off." Chen Pingan turned his head to avoid it and laughed. Not long after he reached the top, just because of Pei Qian Kai, and because she was his first disciple, Chen Pingan was once again in the dark. Inferring the reasons based on the results, it is not difficult to understand how powerful Pei Qian is, how rich his background is, and how spectacular his appearance is. During the years when Chen Pingan was a hermit official, Pei Qian first went to Beiju Luzhou with Li Huai, and then traveled alone to Aizu, Zhong to Shenzhou, Jinjiazu. Pei Qian has even been to more Hauranjiuzhou than Chen Pingan. She has visited almost all of them. Moreover, Pei Qian's memory is far better than that of Chen Pingan, who has a good memory. Chen Pingan himself had noticed it a long time ago, and later Lu Qin specially reminded this matter in the Hehuan mountain boundary. This is also an important reason why Chen Pingan has been hesitant to take Pei Qian with him to travel to Hauran. When she goes out alone, her realm is high enough, and she can walk more casually. When she is with Chen Pingan, she will be very attentive and serious. Don't forget, she can also see into people's hearts. As long as Pei Qian wants to see it, unless he is a monk on the top of the mountain, he will be able to see the scene of his heart connecting with heaven and earth. Therefore, Xuanji Yuxian, where Wafuki is located, is tailor-made for Pei Qian. She has a broad vision and a deep memory. As a master, Chen Pingan certainly hopes that she will see more about the great mountains and rivers and people's hearts and all things, lay a solid foundation for Qi Xing, strive to break through in the future, be higher than herself and be better than others. But she was also worried that Pei Qian would be so focused and single-minded that if she watched too much and too long, she would be exhausted mentally and physically, leaving unknown consequences on her way to the top of martial arts, so Chen Pingan changed her mind again. The words, "the most powerful," are actually not that valuable, so what do they count? Is this a typical old father's mentality? No wonder the old cook, Xing Dafeng, and Wei both chatted in private, saying that their mountain master, Pei Qianyuanshu Xiamili, was very doting on them, and they couldn't care less about them. Like a beloved daughter, I pity a certain boy in green, like a rebellious son who needs yawning and scolding. Chen Pingan said, "Pu Lu and the others will follow you, and you will decide what position and status they will have in the sect in the future." Gu Kan nodded and said, "I know it well." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Huang Lai has been a national teacher in Yushuan Kingdom for many years, and it is inevitable that he will be infected with certain officialdom habits. You have to be more generous and patient. In addition to throwing him 1 or 2 rare Taoist books, help him point the way, we still need to help him peel off the worldly atmosphere and return to the raw jade. Don't think that just because the 3 of us are at a very high level now, each with his own vision and worldview, and all the people and things we talk about are on the top of the mountain, don't think that the word Earth Immortal is not the same. It's valuable, the Yupu realm is nothing, the immortal is nothing more than that, and the ascension is just okay. To put it bluntly, it seems that the most unhelpful moment on the ship is now. If he had gone to the Liju cave that had just shattered and crashed to the ground, the 3 of us would have stood together. Even the platoon may not be able to withstand even half of Grandmaster Shin's punch. Gu Kan said, remember it. Lu Xianyang stood beside him and said, nagging, mother-in-law, are you bothered or bothered? Is it the village schoolmaster who teaches the Meng boy who wears open crotch pants, or the father scolds his son when he returns home? As a result, Chen Pingan's shoulder was hit by an elbow, and the instep was stepped on by Gu Kan, who then twisted hard with his toes. Lu Xianyang snorted, and put on a posture that was full of anger, come back if you have the ability. If Lu Jianxian makes a sound, he will be your grandfather. Chen Pingan put his hands on his sleeves and turned around and said, you 2 continue to recognize each other, I will go back to the house and have a comfortable sleep. Call me again when you reach the border of Chuzhou. Lu Xianyang smiled and said, good guy, you really think of yourself as a master, you dare to use Lu Jianxian and sect leader Gu like this. Gu Kan said from the bottom of her heart, you intend to hold the wedding banquet on his birthday, the 5th day of May, and I told him. In my hometown and small town, the 5th day of May is regarded as the 5 poison day. Children born on this day are born to be broom stars and gods of plague. So Lu Xianyang wanted to hold the wedding on this day, and felt that this was the best day. Lu Xianyang lay on the railing and said lazily, is this kid crying so hard? Gu Kan said calmly, it's okay. Lu Xianyang asked, why don't you give Liu Xiuzhou to Chen Pingan? To be honest, Longquan's sword sect and I don't really need this. He is a money man and his business is very big now, but he urgently needs this thing as the icing on the cake. There are only a few people in his sect, and Blacksmith Wan doesn't like to talk about ostentation. Gu Kan said, a hot face is pressed against a cold butt. He won't accept it, so what will I get if I get on the pole? Lu Xianyang was silent for a moment and sighed, I really envy you for having such a good big brother. It was rare for Gu Kan not to cause trouble. I hope that in the next 100 years, every time we meet again, we don't have to think about what to say, and we don't have nothing to say, only polite greetings. But Lu Xianyang said something that was very embarrassing, I have always been curious, is the snot delicious? Is it salty and bland? Gu Kan said, do you still remember that early one morning, I gave you a meat bun from Mao's shop? You actually even ate my boogers. Lu Xianyang suddenly said, so that's it, I must have put it in a lot, no wonder, I just said that the meat buns tasted particularly good that day. Gu Kan smiled and said, the people in our hometown are simple and honest. Lu Xianyang nodded and said, I almost thought, you and Chen Pingan are both heroes. Master Lu from Qinghu Palace didn't go out much when he arrived at Luopa Mountain. He helped his disciple Zhao Zhu to ask for the status of guest minister, just like an old man making plans for his descendants. Lu Yong was somewhat embarrassed. Xing Qingjia is just the opposite. This fairy named Yuan Hu goes out for a walk every chance she gets. There was really nothing she could do. Every time she returned to the house, she would pick out a proud disciple from her sleeve, Zhai Guangyun, whose Taoist name was Yunyan. She would pester her master with questions. The most important thing was that Zhai Guangyun said something about the wheel of a car. Master, did you see Chen Yinguan when he went out this time? Has Lord Yinguan not returned to the mountain yet? Xing Qingjia didn't dare to let this direct disciple show up, or even let her take her sleeves off her sleeves. He could only restrain her, a little nympho, for fear that she would speak out and have a bad relationship with Luo Pashan. Although he had taken refuge in Baidi City, Xing Qingjia still felt that the Qi practitioners in the wild world were more clear-cut about love and hate than those in the Howren world. Nowadays, in the wild mountains, there are many women who admire the red-robed hidden official at the top of the city. Xing Qingjia often patrolled the mountain with Zhou Mili, who was honored as a mountain protector. Over time, Xing Qingjia gradually came to realize that the strangely dressed little girl in black seemed to have no taboo content in her chat, but in fact she was truly qualified. There was not much useful information about the secret affairs of Luola Mountain. Instead, Xing Qingjia was asked by the little girl in black about the inside story of Jinsui City and the Wild Mountain. Could it be that this seemingly innocent cave realm mute Huda the water monster is lighting himself up? Xing Qingjia was dubious about this at first, until one day during a mountain patrol, Zhomili seemed to be chatting away. He mentioned that Jing Qing had a wide range of friends, and that he and Chen Zhuliu and Mr. Mei Qin were both drinking and boxing friends. After hearing this, Xing Qingjia's heart was shocked when he said that. That man named Axayan, holding a long sword and carrying 3,000 of breaking the array, had previously caused so much trouble in the wild world with a certain scholar who wore a high crown and an iron sword. Outsiders may not know it clearly, but Xing Qingjia has heard about it. As a result, she listened to the innocent little girl that day again, and said that Jing Qing was always talking about it now, and she would have to make up for it when she saw that nephew Jing Shi, who liked to wear white clothes and looked like a rich man in the future. As a meeting gift, she fulfilled her duties and wishes as an elder. The fairy of Yuanhu Lake almost had her heart broken on the spot. After that, Xing Qingjia never went out for a walk again. I am extremely certain that Zhou Songfeng really meant what he said. Every word was a mystery, and his words were on target. He was trying to point her to Xing Qingjia. I quietly passed by Xing Qingjia's house twice, both times with the door closed. The little girl in black, carrying a cotton bag across her body, scratched her face. Yes, it was probably Sister Qingjia who felt that mountain patrols were not interesting and it was hard to say anything clearly, so she declined in this way. I understand, hot, Sister Qingjia is ordering her. My little brain is so bright. A Dolly military ferry docked at Nujiadu. On the ferry, there appeared several ministers from the Ministry of Justice hanging with "Nothing Happened" signs, and a group of Dali monks wearing armor and sabers accompanying the army. It is obvious that although this ferry is not big, the standard of this trip is quite high. Some thoughtful people at the ferry could tell at a glance that there must be important people from Dali on board. The person in charge was a handsome man with a vermilion wine gourd hanging from his waist, Chao Gingxin, the minister of the Ministry of Officials in the capital of Li Dynasty. He revisited his old place and was filled with regret. There are also 2 members of the earthly branch of Dali, children of the Yuan family of Shangzhou Kingdom, Yuan Yingjing sword cultivator Yuan Weijing. Zhou Haijing, the mountain-top female master who complements the earthly branches. The purpose of their trip south to Chuzhou was to 16 people to practice in Luopa Mountain. These Taoist monks and martial arts wizards ranged in age from 9 to 18 years old. On the Luola Mountain side, the only people responsible for picking up people here are a stern-faced boy in green, and a man squatting on the cliffside railing to pick his nose and bounce it off. Since there is no sword talisman, according to the rules, this group of outsiders need to walk to Tiaoyu Mountain, which is a long journey. Chao Gingxin, who had been a kiln supervisor for many years, obviously did not have a close relationship with the man with sinister eyebrows. The 2 parties strode towards each other, high-fived each other, and then held each other tightly. The capital has good soil and water, and Supervisor Chao is getting more and more. He looks more masculine now. Brother Dafeng is still charming and has a sharp eye. Zhou Haijing only felt that the man with a dirty temperament and bad appearance had a very dirty look, but she was already used to it and didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Jing Dafeng whispered, "This girl is so pretty, isn't she my sister-in-law?" Chao Gingxin sighed. It was all his fault that he had a bad mouth and ended up as a mute-eating cactus. Before his uncle Chao Ping led the troops to the barbaric world, he directly issued a military order, telling him to marry Zhou Haijing back home. Jing Dafeng understood by heart that it must be the kind of ambiguous relationship that you have not yet had a bite of. Friends and wives should not be bullied. Jing Dafeng averted his eyes and patted Chao Gingxin on the shoulder. Wolfberry tea, snake gall wine, brothers have it all. Yes, take care of it. It can replenish the kidneys and strengthen the yang. It has great effects. You have to insist on it. Don't be thin-skinned and be polite with your brother. The way to fight on the bed is to tolerate no politeness from you. You must not have the intention to kill the thief and cannot kill the thief. Don't take it off. When I tried to pull up my pants again, the woman asked with confusion on her face, "Are you feeling better?" Chao Gingxin felt his scalp numb when he heard that. He quickly grabbed Jing Dafeng's arm and interrupted the other party's quarrel. "Let's talk about this. Let's get down to business first. I'm a guest at Luopa Mountain this time. I have a lot of responsibility." Jing Dafeng chuckled and said, "Not a small thing. The two armies are facing each other. They just send out troops and end them in a hurry. They beat the drums and withdraw the troops. There are still medicines and wines that can help. But if a woman asks, 'Have you come in?' That's okay. It's really God's will, and it can't be restored by manpower." Chao Gingxin couldn't resist, but luckily Jing Dafeng hadn't forgotten the method of gathering sound into a line, otherwise Zhou Haijing would have listened and he would have fallen into the pit. Chao Gingxin quickly took out a booklet and secretly handed it to Jing Dafeng. "I was not idle this time when I went out. I even suspected that my elbows were turned outward. I focused on Brother Dafeng and Luo Luoshan." There were some 16 words written on the booklet. People's trivial matters can serve as a supplement to the official archives of the imperial court. Jing Dafeng put it into his sleeve calmly and said with a smile, "I'm interested. My brother won't say thank you. We will see our true love at the wine table later." The boy in green coughed a few times, shook his sleeves, clasped his fists high, and introduced himself. "My name is Chen Lingjun, my Taoist name is Jing Qing. I am worshipped by the Jisa Peak Ancestral Master Hall. I want to talk about my realm. I have met Mr. Chao, and I have met all of you. Distinguished guests from the capital." Chao Gingxin nodded and said with a smile, "Ancestor Jingqing is famous far and wide." Chen Lingjun immediately showed his true form, with a proud face, hands on his hips. "Hey hey hey. Governor Chao has a sharp eye and can drink at the table. There is no need to sit at the same table with this guardian of Qilong Lane." As for the group of young men and women, Chen Lingjun really didn't take it seriously. These raw melon eggs and girl movies really don't look down on you. Now, I, Uncle Chen, have learned a lot and have boundless magic power. I can throw out a punch casually. I'm just trying to scare you, but you won't be so frightened that your face turns pale. Can't pear blossoms bring rain and cry? Can you withstand my second punch?" Zhou Haijing asked with a smile, "I would like to ask this immortal master Jingqing, that Pei Qian, Mr. Chen's first disciple, is she on the mountain now?" She and Pei Qian are both among the 4 great masters of Aquarius Continent martial arts. Zhou Haijing had already sparred with Yu Hong before when they set up a ring in Dali capital city and lost, but she believed that she could beat that old guy to death in a few years. Chen Lingjun laughed and said, "Pei Qian, you are a big girl. She is very busy. She comes and goes. She has to do some work on the construction of Dadu in Tongisao. Whoever can do it will do more. That is to say, the master of the mountain stopped him, otherwise Chao Qinglang, a child in a certain leaderless ancestral hall in Yunnan country, or Master Zhong would have to give up his seat to him. Zhou Haijing was a little unsure about the status of this kid in Tsing-yi in Luo Mountain. Just by his tone, he didn't take Jijia Pei Qian seriously. As if he were a junior. In the Yujiang water mansion in the Huangting kingdom of the Great Li Fan, he called himself a brother to the water god. He shouted 5 and 6, and was the first to follow Qin Pingon up the mountain. He was a veritable elder figure in Luolu Mountain. Later, he successfully walked through the water in Jidu, Luzhou, Beiju, and the nascent Soul Realm Water Dragon. She knew all this. Not far away from them, there was complete silence. These 16 people have different backgrounds, family education, and teachers, and have their own thoughts. Each of them carries the hopes of their family, their sect, or their own expectations for themselves. But they were all curious, longing, nervous, uneasy, and fascinated. Just because I will soon see that Luo mountain with my own eyes, and see the legendary Qin Pingon up close. The founder of Luopa Mountain in Chuzhou, Dali, and the head of the Qingping sword sect in Tongisao. The last hidden official of the Sword Qi Great Wall, a close disciple of the literary saint lineage, the junior disciple of Xiuhu Chui Chan, the master of the Great Li State, the Taoist companion of Ning Yao, the culprit who killed the chief disciple of the great ancestor of the wilderness, and the sword on the city wall of Tuoyua Mountain. The person who carved the words, the Zhejiang warrior who fought with Chao Xiai in the battle between Qing and Bai, and the person who joined hands with Lu Xianyang to ask the sword Jingyang Mountain, not to mention the protagonist, Qin Pingon, in a certain landscape travel book, etc. There are so many status titles and so many deeds and feats that one hand can't count them all. Zhou Haijing smiled charmingly, helped many children, and asked a key question: is Master Qin a noble person who forgets things too much? Why doesn't he take time out of his busy schedule to see us? Xing Dafeng said casually, not to mention meeting our Master Qin, these 16 people may not even be able to climb Luola Mountain once in the next many years. Zhou Haijing was always arrogant with his words, so he pretended to be surprised and said, "Wow, I've seen it. Is this the so-called shop bully?" Xing Dafeng glanced at Chao Gingxin. "My sister-in-law always speaks in such a subtle way, you don't care. Is he also a strict wife?" Chao Gingxin smiled and pretended to be stupid. Xing Dafeng's gaze was like throwing a basin at Chao Gingxin. Definitely not accepted. Yuan Huajing reminded her from the bottom of her heart, "Zhou Haijing, please pay attention to your identity." Once the 12 earthly branch monks from Dali arrived, they were nominally under the jurisdiction of Chao Gingxin. Everyone knew the truth. To put it simply, Chao Gung's heart is at most managing things, but Qin Pingon can manage people, or both people and things. It just depends on whether Qin Pingon is willing to manage things. Furthermore, don't you know that Qin Pingon is now the Great Li Imperial Master? If Qin Pingon and His Majesty the Emperor hadn't done this deliberately, this news would have been known throughout the continent. Xing Dafeng then led the group of distinguished guests from the capital on foot to Luola Mountain. Chen Lingjun, who really regarded himself as the ancestor of Jingqing, had his tail raised to the sky, but he used a trick to spread clouds and rain, driving up a white cloud and slowly floating in the sky. The 16 people had different moods when they saw this scene in the immortal family. They didn't know much about this old immortal of Yuaning realm, who had the same surname as Qin, the young hermit official. They only knew that Patriarch Jing Qing had a rejuvenated appearance. He liked peace and quiet and didn't want to go out. He was mostly the kind of person who just wanted to live in peace with the world. He is a righteous Taoist who is willing to live in seclusion in the mountains to practice Taoism, and only wants to achieve immortality. Therefore, the only time he appeared in the outside world was during the Guanli Xingyang mountain. However, I heard that this patriarch Jingqing and Phi, the relationship between Yunshan Knight Tour God and Lord, is irreversible. Others go up the mountain to practice Taoism, but the boy in Tsing Yi really goes up the mountain just to go up the mountain. Walking on the Niujiao Crossing Mountain Road, Zhou Haijing suddenly asked a question about Jing Dafeng. He is obviously a worldly master with a unique heart. Why do he pretend to be a villain and annoy others? What's the point? She has also seen more than a dozen names like the gods on the mountain who are flying high in the clouds and mist, some Qi practitioners who like to pretend to be profound, the martial arts masters who are approachable, and the people in the world who pretend to be informal but are actually just being lazy. It is still rare for someone to be so afraid of others treating him as a superior person. Chao Gung thought for a while and replied seriously. People who know themselves too clearly are more rootless and drift with the water. Before entering the sea, they want to say a few more words to the shore, for fear of being remembered too much, but am afraid of being forgotten too quickly. Zhou Haijing asked casually, why doesn't the Dali court increase the proportion of Qi practitioners among officials? Except for the Song clan of Dali, all countries in the continent wanted to have more Qi practitioners in their temples, whether they were serving as civil servants, military generals, or worshipping guests. Chao Gingxin said casually, the rotten air is like a steamer, and it is easy to discourage the vigorous energy. Zhou Haijing took a deep look at this drunkard Chao, who was admitted to squatting in a manhole and not shitting, but was able to achieve a smooth career in officialdom. Hey! He was quite insightful. Jing Dafeng deliberately didn't look at the flirtatious flirting with his concubine over there. It was disgusting. I am also a little sad, wondering when the hard days will come to an end. Drought will kill me and flood will kill me. A rickety old man wearing a blue shirt and long coat and cloth shoes had been waiting at the gate of Tuyu Mountain in the feudal clan early. There was also a white-haired boy standing with a festive look on his face. A pen in one hand and a booklet in the other, eager to try. It's been done. This time 16 came in one breath. All of them were Qi practitioners below the earth immortal level and martial arts warriors below the third realm of God refining. Happy events happen every year, but there are so many today. Next to the old cook, there was Qin Yuanji, who really didn't want to be standing here. Qin Yuanji looked embarrassed and said, Mr. Zhu, can I really teach others boxing? Zhu Lian said with a smile, you are one of the two candidates appointed by the mountain master to teach boxing, the chief and the deputy. You don't have to doubt the mountain master's vision of people. From the first moment Qin Yuanji saw him, she had never doubted Shanzhu Chen's vision, and she had no doubt about it. Qin Yuanji only gradually changed his attitude very later. Mr. Zhu, is this a pun? Not only did he say that Shanzhu Qin had not misjudged him, but he was also implying that he had not misjudged Shanzhu Qin. Zhu Lian couldn't help but laugh and didn't say anything more. The principle is to be afraid of the unexpected, and the world is afraid of misunderstanding. But Qin Yuanji misunderstood Master Qin, and Zhu Lian didn't think there was anything wrong with it. On the contrary, it was a unique beauty of his own Luoluo Mountain. The dignified mountain owner of Luoluo Mountain was walking on the mountain road in his own territory. He passed by the female martial artist who was walking non-stop. One thought that the other woman was deliberately not looking at him. There must be 300 taels of silver in this place. The other thought, if I just take a few glances at my fellow warriors in an upright manner, I will be suspected of being a disciple. But if I don't take a glance, I have a guilty conscience. Whether I look at it or not, it is wrong. Is it unfair or not? Qin Yuanji asked curiously, even if the mountain master has heavy affairs and cannot escape, wouldn't it be better to teach boxing to Pei Qian? Is it because Tonggizhao is constructing a large tunnel and there is no need for her? Zhu Lian shook his head and said, Pei Qian is only suitable for learning boxing, not for teaching boxing to others. Why? Pei Qian Zi. Qin Yuanji was confused. Zhu Lian patiently explained, Pei Qian's boxing is her own boxing. Because Pei Qian's boxing, fisting, and boxing techniques are all unique to her. Even if she is willing to give her money to teach him, she wants to lend her boxing. No matter who looks at it or observes it repeatedly, the other party will not be able to catch it or learn it. Everything about Pei Qian's boxing is drawn inward. The reason why our mountain master is Pei Qian's master is that he can both draw his spirit inward, or you can distract yourself from the outside. Then as long as the mountain owner is willing, you can let the bystanders and boxing students understand it clearly at first sight. Qin Yuanji was a little sad. I have worked hard to learn martial arts and practice boxing, but it seems that I can't compete with a talent. Zhu Lian smiled and said, don't compare your talent with Pei Qian, it's very boring. At this point, there are only a few in the world except Lin Zhongxian, Pei Bei, and Chao Ci, even our mountain masters are included. No one dared to casually ask questions about the same situation as Pei Qian. Do you think that when Pei Qian was a child, he went to the Great Wall of Sword Qi and used lame excuses like sleepwalking to fool the mountain master? To tell you the truth, the mountain master was in the bamboo house back then. On the second floor, I once wanted to teach Quan Pei Qian in the same situation, but the result was similar to yours. He fell to the ground after just one move. Qin Yuanji couldn't hold back her laughter. This was the first time she heard of such a thing. She asked cautiously, why doesn't Master Qin let Mr. Zhu teach boxing? Zhu Lian smiled and said, unfortunately, I have already made an appointment with the mountain owner to fight. The two parties agreed that we will fight in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom during the heavy snowfall this year. Before that, I have to think carefully about how to fight. It looks a lot better to lose. Wearing a snow-white robe, with a slender figure, he always smiles when he sees him. It is because Zhang Lu has a long life that she is half a head taller than Qin Yuanji. Some people think that the director of Luo Shan is very gentle and touching, while others find him terrifying and very captivating. I don't know who selected the 4 giants of Luo Shan. Zhu Lian, the great steward, was in charge of longevity, and Wei Wenlong of Chuanfu was the chief minister of Zhou Fei. From the time he went up the mountain to this day, Chongqing seemed to have never been blushing with anyone. Chongqing smiled and said, the mountain master did not show up this time. Do these children have some thoughts in their hearts? Zhu Lian smiled and said, that's not the case. Nowadays in the Great Li dynasty, there are countless people who want to go to Luopa Mountain. The criminal department of the imperial court is very careful about the selection of people, and they will not be stupid. Get a few narrow-minded children and send them to us. Although half of them are from related households and come from the Great Li family and the immortal mansion on the mountain, their status is nothing. Therefore, the Ministry of Punishment selects people. In addition to the aptitudes for cultivating Taoism and practicing martial arts, one must be outstanding in first class, and one's character must not be bad, otherwise one day a piece of mouse droppings will ruin the pot of porridge, turn good things into bad things, and bring trouble to the Great Li court. I responded to Luopa Mountain, not to mention that the minister of the Ministry of Punishment will instruct the officials of the headquarters who were responsible for selecting people to be severely punished by then. He will definitely have to hold the family and the immortal mansion behind someone accountable. I am afraid that even His Majesty the Emperor will have to personally intervene in this matter. So each of these 16 people know in their own minds that if they dare to be ignorant when they arrive at Luola Mountain, they will probably not even have the chance to be sensible in the future. Luopa Mountain is willing to place expectations on them and cultivate them carefully, which is not the reason why these children think they can meet Master Chen if they want to. Wei Bo, who wore a golden ring in his earrings, appeared out of thin air at the foot of the mountain. Zhu Lian smiled and said, Yeo Shinjun has come to join in the fun, so he is not afraid that the ostentation will be too big and scare the fledgling children. Wei Bo was too lazy to answer. This new name was shouted out most happily by the little boy in Tsing Yi among the poor people in the mountain. Whoever dares to disrespectfully call Wei Shanjun, Brother Wei, he will become impatient and will not give up until he corrects the other person. When Chen Pingan returns to Luopa Mountain and has someone to support him, and Chen Lingjun is on Wei Bo's side, it will be a big deal. Wei Bo wanted to deal with Chen Lingjun for more than a day or two. Wei Bo remembered something, the old deaf boy of the great sword Qi Wall, whose Taoist name is Long Xing, and whose alias is Gong Tang, fell down on the battlefield of the great sword Qi Wall, visited the wild dojo, and then rose to the top again. Now the old deaf boy is still ascended to the realm, he will soon come to Luola Mountain to serve as a registered worshipper. The white-haired boy muttered, it's really unlucky that someone from the Ascension realm comes to worship him again. Can't you imitate Jing Hao, the Tai Bao of Lixiaozu Qinggong, who goes up the mountain to drink and then get out? Changxing asked, what do you think of Guizhuzhou? Wei Bo asked strangely, why does Changshu Zhanglu ask this? Zhu Lian, however, was very knowledgeable and said, my Taoist friend Changshu has only been a priest for a few years, and he already wants to give up his career. Isn't it appropriate? Only then did Wei Bo understand. Changxing smiled and said, of course I am not resigning from the position of chief executive immediately, but I feel that if this matter is really feasible, I can make preparations early. Changxing actually has an idea in his mind about the next candidate for Luola Mountain's leader, who is Guizhuzhou, the direct disciple of the mountain leader, who comes from the Great Wall of Sword Qi and has been to the Summer Palace. Previously, they accompanied the mountain owner on a trip to the Dhamma temple in the Lotus Root Blessed Land. Changxing looked at Guizhuzhou with admiration and was very optimistic about it. No matter how much he saw it, he was satisfied. Guizhuzhou is the bitter hand of fellow senior sister Pei Qian. The white-haired boy pulls the girl in the mink hat and worships Guizhuzhou as the leader of the alliance. These things may seem like a joke, but in fact, if you look deeper, it is not that simple. Alyosha boat approached the border of Chuzhou. Chen Pingan called Pulu and Guan Gui to Shinku. They sat down in the house and said straight to the point, you will soon follow Gu Kan to Fuyao Island to establish a sect and become a brand new sect. The first generation of ancestors, for a long time, it is not easy to be respected by people inside and outside the mountain. Don't get used to it over time. Parting is imminent, and ugly words are ahead. If I can send you in, I can drag you out. When the time comes, Gukan won't be able to stop her even if she wants to, and besides, he may not be able to stop her. The two of them were silent. The nascent soul realm old woman, whose real name was Su Fu, trembled and plucked up the courage to break the silence. We will follow Mr. Chen's teachings. They are all top-notch people. When it comes to the relationship and friendship between Gu Kan and Chen Pingan, they have seen and heard it with their own eyes. If Chen Pingan really wanted to deal with them, he didn't even need to say a word. When they met, he just looked at Gu Zongzhu. Gu Kan would definitely kill them without saying a word. The leader of a sect cleans up the family in his own territory and does not need to report to the Chinese Confucian temple. Shen Kut suffered the most at the hands of Chen Zhenxian. In those bleak years, when ghosts were beating against the wall, how could the suffering be dismissed with just a word? Since the old woman Pu Lu had taken the advantage, the old master immediately stood up, clasped his fists and said in a deep voice, "Chen Jianxian, Shen Ku has now awakened and changed his past. If it weren't for Chen Jianxian's love, he would be lucky enough to follow sect master Gu and make a fortune." With his genealogical identity, he dared to say something conscientious at this moment. From the first step of leaving that world, Shen Ku made up his mind. In this life, no matter how many years or decades he had left to live, he would just run for the future. A good person does good deeds. Chen Jianxian's Taoism is endless. You should know that these words written by Qin Shen are extremely sincere words from his heart, and not a single word is a false pretense. Shen Ku even stood up to express his stance, and even the old woman Su Fu and the ghost Guan Piao had to stand up to show their sincerity. Chen Pingon put his hands in his sleeves, nodded and smiled. "There is no doubt that what I said is true. We have to wait and see whether it is true or false. We have agreed in advance that if you have the ability to make me believe it today, I will be there tomorrow. If you lie to me about anything, it would be a double crime." The more Shen Ku talked, the more energetic he became. He just kept one thought clear to the end, risked it all, and said loudly, "Just never give Chen Jianxian a chance to misjudge Shen Ku." Chen Pingon stretched out his hand and pressed twice, indicating that they all sit down and chat. "There is no need to be so formal. I will let Gu can help you light a life-extending lamp in the ancestral hall, and I won't give you a heavy hand. If you are greedy for life and fear of death, you will not dare to take it. Opportunities for good people to do good things." As soon as Shen Ku touched the chair with his buttocks, he quickly stood up and thanked Chen Jianxian again. The old master was overjoyed. Is such a good thing really possible? Su Fu and Guan Gui looked at each other and lit a life-extending lamp in the ancestral hall, which was really equivalent to saving another life. Chen Pingon did not want to simply use force to suppress others, causing them to have nightmares whenever they think of the name Chen Pingon. He slowly said, "If you ask what a gentleman is, it is just a sincere and upright thought. Over time, if you hold it to the end, you will naturally facing small things is like facing a big enemy, sitting in a secret room is like sitting on a thoroughfare. Day and night, I have to examine myself 3 times and check myself. Year after year, I am determined to follow the path. I will naturally face a big enemy as if nothing has happened, and I am in a busy city. Who can be in this world? Who can bully me in terms of profit? Who can insult me in name? Who can truly hold me accountable for hundreds of years?" The room was like a secret room. The 3 of them chewed these words carefully, but no one dared to be the first to break the silence. Everyone was filled with admiration. Anyway, Shen Ku felt that Shanju Qin was worthy of being a Zijing martial artist with powerful boxing skills. He spoke calmly and delivered heavy punches, making others have the urge to kneel down and kowtow in worship. Ghost Guan Peep, who had also been a teacher, felt that Chen Pingon was worthy of being a disciple of literary saint. The old woman Su Fu felt that Chen Jianxian and Ning Yao were a match made in heaven. Chen Pingon was actually quite embarrassed, so he had to joke, "Don't be confused and confused, quickly take out a pen and paper and write down these few words of wisdom." The solemn atmosphere suddenly relaxed a little, and Chen Pingon said, "The separation is imminent, so how about we both think of each other's good things?" Shen Ku had already found some mysterious feeling, and before the other 2 people could say anything, he had already said, "Shen Shen is so sincerely convinced, how dare you disobey your order?" For some reason, Shen Ku was scared to death of Luopa Mountain before, but now, Shen Ku felt that he was not afraid even going up the mountain. Shen Ku was the first to say anything nice, so Su Fu and Guan Go had no choice but to follow suit. Chen Pingon stood up and walked to the window, smiling and saying, "There is an old saying in our hometown, which says that a person cannot be poor. If he has no money in his pocket, it may be temporary. If he is poor, he will be poor for a lifetime. Su Fu and Guan Qiu looked at Shen Ku at the same time. The old grandmaster looked puzzled, but asked them with his eyes, "Aren't you all flatterers? Shen gave you the opportunity, but you didn't use it." Lu Xianyang clicked his tongue and said in surprise, "You said the custom of Luola Mountain is strange, isn't it?" Gu Kan nodded with a smile and said, "If you smoke a cage with orchid, it will smell fragrant over time." Huang Lai had no choice but to think of a word to echo, "Chen Shan has done a great job." When we reach Niujiao Ferry, we are close to Luopa Mountain. Nothing happens today, even if you don't make money, it is still valuable. Another uneventful day for the little ferry. The group of 16 people who climbed to Tiaoyu Mountain instead of Luola Mountain felt a little less disappointed because they saw the long-lived Taoist patriarch at the foot of the mountain. Even though the real owner still didn't show up, Luola Mountain did not treat them as dispensable, as a completely negligible existence. But they didn't know that Qin Pingan was actually sitting at the top of the steps of Tiaoyu Mountain Road at that time. Not only that, but also Lu Jianxian and the madman Gu Kan. It was just a cover-up trick that prevented them from seeing it. Lu Xianyang wanted to sit in the middle, but Gu Kan refused, so Lu Xianyang moved his seat. As a result, Gu Kan followed him and moved his seat. Lu Xianyang became angry and asked his eldest brother to take a small limelight. "What the hell?" Lu Xianyang, who still couldn't succeed, said angrily, "Little slugs, they are all the people who are about to become the leader of the clan. Are you naive?" Gu Kan chuckled and said, "I'm naive, but you're not." When Lu Xianyang learned that Qin Pingan would not show up today, it didn't matter. He immediately got up and left, patting his and leaving. If he didn't stay here, he would have his own place to stay. Sect leader Lu first went to the Longshu River near the blacksmith shop. Being familiar with the road, I put a duck under both arms and went back to my mountain to stew duck with bamboo shoots and dried duck. It's a pity that it can't be called Old Duck Pot, it's a little older. Chen Pingan and Gu Kan returned to Jilin Peak. The young Yin Guan was polite in his words, and Jing Qingjia couldn't be more polite. This made Qin Pingan a little confused. It was actually the first time that Gu Kan and this Jinquaching fairy named Yuan Hu met, and the arrangement was simple. Lu Yuzhou was the deputy sect master, and Jing Qingjia was regarded as the god of wealth in name only. Pei Qian had no choice but to use the Three Mountains talisman again, leaving the fish scale ferry in Tonggishao and arriving at the Lotus Root blessed land. Pei Qian first went to the Xinqiang Temple in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom. The martial arts surged forward, but Pei Qian once again smashed them away with his fists. The martial arts luck fell like rain on the blessed land of the world. On the top of a strange mountain somewhere, Pei Qian then replaced Qin Pingan's highest position. In addition to the first level of martial arts, which is equivalent to just stepping into the martial arts, there are a total of 8 levels from the second level to the mountain top level, and there are 8 positions on the top of the mountain. Coupled with the third level of the end, the energy is strong, the true state is restored, and the spirit is reached. So there are 11 positions in total. For thousands of years, every genius martial artist has competed with his contemporaries to win. If he reaches the strongest level in each moment and ascends to the next level, he can receive a gift of martial arts from heaven and earth. But for 10,000 years, there have been countless warriors in the world. The number of warriors who have reached the next level with the title of the strongest is not small, but those who can come here to stand for a while, especially those who cannot give up their position, are without exception. He is a genius among martial arts geniuses. But in less than 200 years, most of the old faces on the mountaintop were quickly replaced. Qingming Tianxiaolin Jiangxian, the Yashan forest master, is now the well-deserved #1 martial artist in the world. This person, whose real name was the Great Sword Chi priest of the state of Yan, came to this place once to return to his true form. Pei Bei, the female martial arts goddess of the Duduan dynasty and the best martial artist in the world, has a place on the top of the mountain. As Pei Bei's direct disciple, Chao Xiai, dressed in white, occupies 4 positions here. Chen Pingan had also been here before, but within a few days, he was squeezed out of his position by his founding disciple. So here and now, there are 2 Pei Qian of different ages. First there is a weird little black girl. Then there is a young woman with a bun. Pei Qian failed to see the master here. She said nothing and stood on the top of the mountain waiting for a long time. When she found that her mind still had not returned to where she was, she walked down the mountain silently, not even bothering to say anything to that being. The strange existence who once again made an exception for Pei Qian walked beside her and said with a smile, "Not bad, he showed up sooner than I expected." Pei Qian was already in a bad mood, but she just remembered that her master had received half a punch. She endured it again and again, and did not say a word that it was none of your business. The ancestor of the military strategist who used his fists to open up a martial arts path for the world 10,000 years ago said with a smile, "You can't hold grudges for that fluttering half-fist until now, right?" Pei Qian really endured it again and again, but finally couldn't help it. He just didn't forget to say the word "senior" first, and then said, "Why do you have such a bad mouth?" "I feel that I was disrespectful in my words and deeds when I went up and down the mountain last time. If you have the ability, come at me and put the blame on my master. What kind of hero do you think you are?" The ancestor of the military strategist laughed heartily and said, "That boy Chen Pingan, his boxing skills are acceptable, just average. He is far behind Chao Xiai, but his ability to recruit disciples is quite good." Pei Qian learned a lesson and was worried that this guy didn't follow any moral principles, so she just went down the mountain in silence and said nothing. In the past, Shao Haiden's temper would have taught you what firecrackers are and what smoke rising from ancestral graves is. The first ancestor of the military strategist escorted Pei Qian all the way to the foot of the mountain and said with a smile, "Go back and tell Chen Pingan that you can come to the foot of the mountain to talk." "Just the bottom of the mountain?" Pei Qian said angrily, "Senior is so capable, please invite my master yourself." The tall man with a vague figure stretched out his hand, as if he wanted to rub Pei Qian's head. "Who cares about this temper?" Pei Qian turned away and glared at him. The next moment, just as Pei Qian was about to turn his head and look towards the top of the mountain, his mind was thrown out of this vast world. A man wearing a snow-white robe with pure golden eyes stood on the top of the mountain with his hands in sleeves, condescending, and the burly man who turned to look at him, narrowed his eyes and smiled. "I came uninvited, I am half an old friend. Let's meet again, if you're not convinced, then, have a fight." The first ancestor of the military strategist stared at that figure and sneered, "You're just half a man, how dare you pretend to be a master and scare me? I never thought that a tall woman would appear next to that man, leaning on the ground with a sword, scaring you." Sword of Coming Chapter 1228. Chapter 1228, Teaching Boxing and Preaching. Standing on the top of the mountain is Chen Pingan's mind and sword holder. Previously, we traveled far away together to a secret sword-making place. The first ancestor of the military strategist sneered, pretending, "You finally look like a human being." It is both the greatest compliment and the greatest irony. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "A life of frustration has led to today, and old friends on the road have withered so far. If you and the sword cultivator hadn't wanted to occupy the old heaven and parted ways with the founder of the 3 religions, leading to the first schism in the world, otherwise your military strategists would have long ago Li Jiao, you will not end up in a situation where you will be beheaded first and then imprisoned for 10,000 years. Now that you think about it, do you regret it?" The first ancestor of the military strategist strode up the mountain and said sarcastically, "My identity has changed, and my tone has also changed." The pure martial artist who I was before did not dare to talk to me like this. It is raining from the sky, it is raining from the sky, the founder of the three religions. I am really not afraid as time goes by. Your kid has been transformed into a Taoist. The one in the sky cannot be broken, so they can only surround it and sit there for thousands of years facing Zhou Mi and the new gods. You both look at me and I look at you. If you stare blankly, there will be another one in the world. Wouldn't it be a disaster? Zhou Mi ascended to the sky, Chen Pingon was on the ground, each taking half. Of course, it's not Zhou Mi or Chen Pingon, it's the co-lord of the heavenly court who turned around after 10,000 years. Whether it's Haoran Jiaxing or Chen Pingon of Mubadal Ali, they all got to where they are today step by step. Like the two of them divided the family property equally. The ancestor of the military strategist was chopped down by a sword from the top of the mountain and retreated to the foot of the mountain. The burly man just stretched out his hand to grab it, pulled out the abundant sword energy that was as difficult as a long river of time from his body, and threw it away thousands of miles away. Outside, there was an earth-shaking vibration. The burly man didn't even look at it and just climbed the mountain again. There were no words this time, and he just walked silently to the mountainside, only to be hit back to the foot of the mountain by a magnificent sword light pouring down the mountain like a waterfall in the Tianhe River. The sword energy was condensed and spread all over the mountain. The ancestor of the military strategist used his fists to open the way, forcibly creating a huge gap, and went upstream. He laughed and said, "It's light and weak. Compared with thousands of years ago, the sword's energy is even stronger. It doesn't increase but decreases." It seems that the previous battle with the armored man has severely damaged the divinity. The dog bites the dog and the hair is all over the ground. It's pitiful to say that it's pathetic. How can I compare to you, a couple of dogs and a man and a woman, who share half of the heaven? The bearer of divinity, the new owner of the place where half of the down and out lives, and the most lethal sword holder ever. The third sword slashed the burly man into two, but the latter instantly returned to his original appearance. He did not continue to climb the mountain, nor spoke again, but stood there halfway up the mountain. Chen Pingon smiled and said, "Hand over the three swords, that's enough etiquette." The tall woman smiled and nodded. The first ancestor of the military strategist just returned to the top of the mountain in a gloomy mood. But he remembered two things, so he endured it. A man has clear grudges, and when he looked at Chen Pingon, he was a little more pleasing to the eye. Chen Pingon looked at the ancestor of the military strategist and suddenly felt strange. I heard that the person before me, 10,000 years ago, was famous for being arrogant, saying many exciting words, and also saying many jaw-dropping wild words. For example, the sentence, "When I open up a complete martial arts path, all races in the world can join me in becoming gods in the flesh. They no longer need to rely on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to feed themselves, and there is no need to worship or offer incense to anyone. Only by establishing a religion in this way can we be worthy of being called ancestors." Another example is, "Let me raise one more level of martial arts, and I can beat up the Taoist ancestor with one hand." Today's discussion, if you are a sword cultivator who no longer wants to be inferior to anyone else, and who wants to go to the ruins of heaven to refine swords and make the final decision, come on, stand on my side, and compete with the founders of the three religions on the opposite side. Although this ancestor of the military strategist lost, he never gave up. The tall woman smiled and said, "I am very forgetful. I just remembered that I came here. It seems that I broke the rules." The young master was a little unhappy and reminded me to leave quickly. The first ancestor of the military strategist then suggested, "Why don't you go? Just stay here and have a fight with the young master. According to the etiquette of thousands of years ago, whoever wins will listen." Chen Pingon said, "Then you go back first." The tall woman nodded and said, "Master, don't forget the promise of Jiazi. Chen Pingan smiled and said, I have a good memory. The first ancestor of the military strategist finally breathed a sigh of relief when the sword wielder, one of the 5 supreme masters, left this ancient star that was both a prison and a dojo. After all, a common attack had injured Doji too much, and he had completely lost his true body. The 3 soft sword blows had already made him feel overwhelmed for a long time. He sat cross-legged on the top of the mountain and began to peel off those lingering ghosts. The scattered remaining sword energy, every time a sword energy is thrown out, it may contain several ancient swordsmanship, creating ravines a million miles long in the Star Dojo, and finally it will flick off with just one finger. With his pure swordsmanship, he smashed a hole hundreds of miles deep. If it weren't for the help of the Li Xing to cover up the celestial phenomena, the Yin-Yang family, 5 Elements family and Qin Tian supervisor Qi masters in the world would probably have suffered. Chen Pingan said, Zenwishan Yu Shiwu, he is willing to return the 3 martial arts fortunes of the seniors. For the sake of saving 2 steps, can the seniors keep Yu Shiwu when they get back those martial arts fortunes? Mental memory, try not to hurt the foundation of his soul. In fact, there is some suspicion that some pots are not opened and which pots are not mentioned. The first military dissolution in the world turned out to be a joint beheading and dismemberment. Talking about this as soon as we meet is really rubbing salt into the wound. The first ancestor of the military strategist put his fists on his knees and showed no signs of anger. He said calmly, you can make another request. The implication is that you agree to this matter. So easy to talk to. Then we, as juniors, have to talk a little more, right? Although Chen Pingan was confused, he still thought about it carefully and said, my founding disciple Pei Qian, her photographic memory is different from that of ordinary Qi practitioners. Does your senior have a proper solution? The ancestor of the military strategist, who had his back to Chen Pingan, softened his tone a bit and said, change your request. Although Chen Pingan felt regretful, he had no choice but to change his request and said, Senior, when you come down the mountain, you can go sit in the lotus root blessing of the junior in your free time. The first ancestor of the military strategist sneered, who do you think I am, that I want to imitate the mountain and find a tree pillar to sit on? Judging from his tone, it was obvious that he was unwilling to go to lotus root blessed land to help take charge of the mountains and rivers. Now that Chen Pingan has settled the matter of Yu Shiwu with this senior, he is actually quite surprised. He originally thought that good things will be long-lasting, and even prepared the worst plan of breaking up if he disagreed with him. Now that he has achieved his goal, Chen Pingan no more trying to push the envelope. Just accept it as soon as you see fit. Unexpectedly, the ancestor of the military strategist had no intention of letting Chen Pingan go immediately. He came and left whenever he wanted. What kind of place was this? Prepare the toilet with corn clothes. Chen Pingan didn't care, he just settled down as he came, and simply started to observe the 11 warriors standing on the top of the mountain. Chen Pingan, who was squeezed out of the 10th level of Qi by his eldest disciple and was no longer in the dark, actually didn't feel surprised at all. He said that he had no regrets in his heart. That would be a lie to himself, but in the end he was more happy. But how come Chen Pingan, the 9-level man in red robe, was also squeezed out? After all, Chen Pingan is really confident that he will not move here for a long time. It is himself who has been unprecedented for thousands of years. This is an established fact. Even Chen Pingan, who is as cautious as Chen Pingan, feels that this person has hoped to achieve this at least within a few hundred years. No one will come after you. No matter what, in less than a year, Chen Pingan lost 2 seats at the top of the mountain one after another. Chen Pingan couldn't help but feel a little melancholy. He squatted down and looked at the latecomer who had seized the territory. The other party was quite easy to recognize. Among the 11 seats, there was only this strange martial artist. He sat cross-legged on the ground, with his back straight and his hands folded on his abdomen. The muscles in his arms were tangled, and his appearance could not be seen clearly, just because his hair was hanging to the ground, even covering his entire face. This man's fists are so vast that each hair is like a waterfall pouring down slowly. As this man breathes, the hairs flutter. His body and muscles are strong and his fists are powerful, which can be said to be thrilling. Chen Pingan looked at it carefully and found it even more incredible. It turned out that every hair was covered with tens of thousands of ghosts. The first ancestor of the military strategist said with a smile, "It's normal to lose to her from the top of the mountain to the bottom level. As time goes on, they will only get stronger and stronger. The world's martial arts path will never let you and Chao Ci, two young boys, share the same status and steal the limelight." "How did you feel about the half-punch earlier?" Chen Pingan said truthfully, "It's a great taste to have hot pot and wine." The burly man laughed heartily. "Okay, that's a good statement. Once your sentence is over and you return to the world, you must have a hot pot and drink." Chen Pingan asked tentatively, "As long as the seniors don't mind, how about the juniors go back to the mountain, prepare hot pot and wine, and come here in person to have a good meal?" The first ancestor of the military strategist clicked his tongue and said, "As long as there is a little advantage to be taken advantage of, you really don't fall behind at all. Can those who follow you learn well?" Chen Pingan was surprised. Why did the ancestor of the military strategist's words always have an inexplicable meaning when the two sides met on the mountaintop? "What qualifications do you have to tell me what my Luoyuoshan style is like?" The burly man said, "In the next 100 years, there will be a lot of monks in the 14th realm. I don't know how many will be left in the next 1,000 years." Chen Pingan nodded. "Everyone will pursue his future according to his own ability. In the end, whether it will blossom or bear fruit, the future will depend on his own ability." Carrying the true name of the demon clan and combining it with half of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Chen Pingan's immortal slew robe can actually be named Fengjing. As a result, the battle with Ma Kushuan caused the robe to be broken, and there were a few fish in the wild world that had the opportunity to slip through the net. The next moment, Chen Pingan's mind returned to his true body. He was in a mansion at the foot of Fuyao, where he could lean on the railing and overlook Chaoyu Mountain. On the top of the mountain, the burly man stood up and came to a place where he had to squat down and lower his head just to look him in the eye. The charcoal-looking little girl, with her arms folded across her chest and her head tilted, seemed to be very puzzled. "Is this stupid big guy just bragging about not drafting at my master's side? In fact, he can't eat spicy food or drink alcohol. Just the thought of eating hot pot and drinking old wine makes you unbearable? Ha, you're such a big guy, you're a loser. You're a million miles behind my master." The burly man with gentle eyes wanted to reach out and rub her little head, but the little girl glared and angrily said, "Don't touch me." The man who once took the place of the first Taoist priest in the world and continued to ascend to the sky covered his face with slightly trembling palms. "Zhu Lian, the master of Luola Mountain, has a long life, and the king of Wei in the northern mountains." Their appearance together was scary enough for the 16 people. Especially the arrival of Beiwei Yeo Shinjun is both unexpected and reasonable. In Tiaoyu Mountain, 8 martial arts practitioners and 8 Taoists live separately. When they arrived at the mountain, Zhu Lian led them to their respective residences. The house was clean and tidy, nothing more, neither rich nor immortal. The master in charge didn't tell them any rules or taboos, he just told them to abide by their duties and be free to do whatever they wanted. As for how to calculate duty and what arbitrariness is, there is no explanation. The 2 masters, Xing Juzhong and Qin Yuanji, who were responsible for teaching boxing to the 8 people, both lived in the mountains. Master Zheng initially wanted to be neighbors with Master Tsin, but it didn't work out. And this man, who didn't look like a master at all, told them with certainty as soon as they met, saying that he was one of the few martial arts masters in Aquarius Continent. He was talented in boxing and was even more talented in teaching boxing. You must cherish it. On the other hand, the woman who was clearly more like a master told them straight to the point that her qualifications were average and she was not good at martial arts. If anyone felt that they had been misled, they could find someone else to teach them. But the other 8 preachers still did not show up. If Luo Shan didn't tell them, they wouldn't dare to ask. It is most difficult for the immortal family to save people by common sense. It depends on everything, including talent, character, chance, acquired habits, etc. Everyone just silently practices and refines qi according to the Taoist methods they have learned before. Previously on the ferry, several boys and girls had made an appointment to go to the gate of Luopa Mountain for a stroll when they had free time. Now they were all beating in their hearts and did not dare to have such an idea. I was afraid that if I jumped into the fish mountain, I would be caught red-handed, so I told them that I could just pack up my bags and go home. Between Tiaoyu Mountain and Luola Mountain, there is Fuyolu, which is also said to be a mountain. When the weather is clear, you can vaguely see the scenery of Fuyolu. If you are lucky, you can also see the Jisa Peak shrouded in clouds and mist. The ancestral hall of Luola Mountain was built there. The more it looks unreal, the more curious it becomes. I look forward to the next meeting of the ancestral hall and take a look at those images of immortals riding the wind and swords like rainbows from a distance. In just a few days, the 8 people's impressions of the 2 boxing masters were greatly changed. The one surnamed Zheng was careless and had no real skills, but he was really capable. On the contrary, it was the female master surnamed Xian. If she was not deliberately hiding her clumsiness and unwilling to teach the truth, she would just be embroidering pillows and teaching the boxing moves. She was strict and orderly, nothing more. Jing Dafeng smiled and deliberately didn't say anything. Instead, he deliberately added fuel to the fire and taught the 8 martial arts geniuses who had eyes as high as their heads a few good punches. If it is not a good piece of material, the Dali imperial court would not dare to send it here to waste Shanju Chen's precious time in cultivating the Taoism. They are all possessed by the fist spirit, and they have been inspected one by Qin Tianjian secretly, and they are indeed martial arts. If not, the Dali imperial court would not dare to send the next batch of carefully selected sword cultivators to Luopa Mountain. Every time Qin Yuanji takes a break from teaching boxing, she always subconsciously purses her lips when she is alone in the martial arts arena. At night, looking at the lights on the table and the precious boxing records that Mr. Zhu compiled and hand-copied in his early years, she wanted to go to Luola Mountain several times to find Mr. Zhu, or directly talk to Chen Pingan about this boxing. She couldn't teach him, not out of anger, but because Qin Yuanji really believed that his level and qualifications were not enough. When it comes to whether he has any grievances in his heart, Qin Yuanji certainly has some. The sun is setting in the west, and the sky is burning with clouds, bright red, like ancient gods smashing countless corals. There are green willows in the mountains, craggy rocks at dusk, and iron accumulation in the blue sky. After Pei Qian left the Lotus Root blessed land, she came to the Taoyu Mountain martial arts arena. She observed it secretly for a while. When Qin Yuanji said to take a rest, Pei Qian was sitting on the roof. There were no whispers in the martial arts field. After all, this is the top of the vassal mountain of Luopa Mountain. God knows if there is that immortal who has used his magical power to view mountains and rivers and is looking at this place from a distance in Luopa Mountain. But they abide by the rules and dare not make any mistakes. They don't say anything with their mouths, but their eyes can speak. This made Qin Yuanji feel a little uncomfortable, but he could only pretend that nothing happened. At the same time, Qin Yuanji suddenly understood a truth that Mr. Zhu himself said, but unfortunately she did not feel deeply about it back then. It's because she is so blessed that she doesn't know how blessed she is. It turns out that in the past, no one took the realm seriously, not only in their eyes but also in their hearts. Qin Yuanji heard someone calling Sister Xian. She heard the voice was familiar but the title was unfamiliar. She came back to her senses, turned around and saw that it was Pei Qian. Qin Yuanji was stunned. She just smiled and nodded out of habit, forgetting to return the favor with her hands and fists. After all, when the two parties met in the past, their relationship was always so casual. When Pei Qian showed up, the martial arts arena was in an uproar. Unlike that young Hamid official, Pei Qian's appearance has long been known to people in the mountains. Otherwise, in Aquarius continent today, there wouldn't be so many quaint women wearing black clothes and wearing buns, all of whom would go by the pseudonym Jing Qian. Pei Qian, Grand Master Pei. One of the four great masters of Aquarius continent Wushu, who earned the nicknames Jing Qingming and Jing Seiqian for his ability on the battlefield of Dali capital. Pei Qian didn't talk nonsense to them, saying that she would stay in the four realms, and you guys would go together. Remember, we would go together. One punch at a time, the 8 people were left lying on the ground twitching, as if they were walking around incessantly. Pei Qian looked indifferent and said, "Are they all trash? Do you deserve to come here to learn boxing? Do you also deserve Qin Yuanji to teach you boxing? Get up. If you can't stand up on the count of 3, leave Tiaoyu Mountain by yourself and find another master to learn boxing. Aren't all the eyes above the eyebrows? Are you afraid that you can't find anyone to teach boxing? Sister Qin is also a half-baked little brat like you, who has the right to look down on her." Before Pei Qian could count to 3, there were 7 people who stood up quickly as if their buttocks were on fire. There was also a girl with the weakest body. She was helped up by a young man who looked very similar to her, but she was just swept away by Pei Qian. At one glance, her eyes instantly turned red, and her mind went blank. The girl bit her lips tightly, not daring to cry. Pei Qian said solemnly, "Walking 6 steps for 2 hours, I am exhausted, and it will take me 2 hours to crawl on the ground. If you can't do it, pack your luggage and go to the foot of the mountain to make a floor." Zheng Dafeng squatted in the distance, secretly gloating. Pei Qian looked at these people and became more and more angry. They all learned martial arts when they were young. If you get to the 2nd floor of the bamboo house, you can pack up and get out that day. When he was a child, he didn't think it was a big deal. Pei Qian and Xiaomi Li secretly nicknamed Qin Yuanji Qin Hanin in secret. When Pei Qian grew up and reached a high level, he realized that it was not easy for Qin Yuanji to practice boxing, but it was not easy for Qin Yuanji to practice boxing. Pei Qian now treats Qin Yuanji with no pity at all. It is the respect of one pure martial artist for another pure martial artist. Zheng Dafeng said with a playful smile, "Pei Qian, how to teach boxing is mainly decided by me and Qin Yuanji. If you are willing to come over and help me, of course there is no problem, but whether the 8 of them stay or go, it doesn't count if you say so." Pei Qian said dully, "I understand." It was her who went beyond the rules. Zheng Dafeng said with a smile, "Don't hold grudges in the small account book, let alone secretly complain to the mountain owner." Pei Qian turned around and rolled his eyes. Zheng Dafeng stood up and patted his butt. "Did you see that you are still calling me bragging? In the early years, I often gave guidance on Grandmaster Pei's boxing. Otherwise, would she be able to listen to your Master Zheng's advice today? Besides, Grandmaster Pei and you when Master Qin was sparring, you were still wearing crotchless pants. Each of you, your boxing skills are not very good, but your spirit is very high. Either you are thinking about discussing the 8 classics with Master Pei in the future, or you are thinking about having the opportunity to meet with Qin Shan. Let's talk face to face, let's talk nonsense. Sirs, rich ladies, don't stand there in a daze, hurry up and start walking. Pei Qian walked to Qin Yuanji and hesitated for a moment, feeling that he was still unhappy, and said, Sister Qin, why should you underestimate yourself? Do you have to work hard to practice boxing and keep doing millions of things to pursue one person? In the state of fists being handed out and no one in front of you, are you just talking about asking people about boxing? After learning boxing, and then teaching people to learn boxing, of course it will only be more important, shouldn't this be the truth? Qin Yuanji looked at Pei Qian's clear eyes and still pursed her lips, but she gradually raised the corners of her lips and nodded. Xiao Haiden can also speak the truth now. Pei Qian seemed to have succeeded all of a sudden, looking embarrassed and scratching his head. It turns out that heroes are most afraid of meeting their neighbors. Neighbors know too much about youthful embarrassments and bad habits. No matter who is rich and wealthy and returns to his hometown in fine clothes, no matter what his face looks like, he will inevitably murmur in his heart, is it him? Just her. At this moment, a middle-aged man wearing a blue shirt, long coat and cloth shoes appeared out of thin air and stood at the edge of the martial arts arena. Just appearing there, the 8 children who were already guilty of a capital crime became more and more out of breath, and their simple 6-step walking was more or less out of shape. The man in green shirt smiled and said, learn boxing well. In the future, you should cherish the boxing lessons with Jing Dafeng and take the boxing lessons with Qin Yuanji seriously. If you can't do it, go down the mountain and go back and forth wherever you come from. Just after saying this, Chen Pingan took Pei Qian and walked down the mountain. Pei Qian was a little embarrassed, but Chen Pingan smiled and said, the teaching was good. It will be better if I teach you more calmly next time. Pei Qian nodded and said, I am not patient enough. In fact, I was far behind them back then. It makes no sense to lose my temper today. Master, after thinking about it, I may be angry at myself for not being sensible back then. Chen Pingan smiled and said, you have criticized yourself so much, how can Master still knock your chestnuts? Pei Qian grinned. He meant what he said and couldn't deceive the master. Chen Pingan was a little proud of herself. Qin Yuanji finally no longer looked at her like a prodigal, even if he didn't look like him, he was just pretending to be nice. It's really not easy. Pei Qian said, then I will go back to Tongyi's house. Chen Pingan smiled and said, you can stay a few more days. During the busy time of tea picking, the rural village school took a break. At that time, the Meng children were very happy. The master felt that teaching was really difficult, but as soon as school started, another Meng boy dropped out of school. Earlier at the Great Wall of Sword Chi, Chen Pingan passed on a 3 mountains talisman to the old deaf boy to facilitate the new envoy's journey to Luopa Mountain. The old deaf boy didn't know the pros and cons, so he just regarded it as an ordinary big talisman on the top of the mountain. It has magical effects, and he didn't feel it was too hot. It's just a pity that this talisman has the restriction of using it 3 times, otherwise it will consume its own merit. Otherwise, there is no one in the world. Isn't the Green Mountain a place for those who hold talismans to escape? However, Xiago knew the background of Mr. Sanshan Joho, and she deliberately did not tell the old deaf child the truth. Xingqingjia was on Luopa Mountain, but after all, the Mr. Xiaomo, who had not waited for the half-grand master, followed Gu Kan to a place called Yunyan Country in Tongya Continent. Gu Kan said that she had many old friends there, so she prepared herself mentally. The old master of Yiluo, the great demon on the throne, looked up, and now the women of the Daquan dynasty worship Jing Xing. There is also Taoist priest Hauran Nin, who stands proudly among the heroes in the wild peach pavilion where he lays sick every day in the 100,000 mountains. The entire Jinsui city had already been refined into emptiness by Mr. Zheng. Mr. Zheng taught her a technique to turn emptiness into reality. As long as Gu Kan selected the sect address, Xing Qingjia could take it out and take root in it. If you want to move to another place, it is easy. As for the group of genealogy monks in Jinsui city who are still kept in the dark, they are not treated as well as Zhai Guangyun. They have never been released by Xing Qingjia and are trapped in the situation of a dog eating the sun. They are frightened and have no idea why the sky has changed. When the cross-continental ferry left Chuzhou, Xing Qingjia took his direct disciple out of his sleeves and learned that Lord Guan had returned to the mountain. He also met and chatted with the master for a few words. Zhai Guangjian's eyes were full of resentment. Nian Nian, complaining that the master doesn't care about her and doesn't have the beauty of an adult. Gu Kan smiled playfully. Xing Qingjia had no choice but to tell this direct disciple, someone is in the world now. If you pester the young hidden official like this, be careful of her sword cutting off your head. The master is here when the time comes. I can only help you get your head back, and I just hope she won't mess up your true body and soul. Although Zhai Guangyun was not afraid of anything, she was still very wary of Ning Yao, who had never been masked before. The reason was simple. The higher Ning Yao's level, the more distasteful she would find in the wild world. Ouch, an Ascension Realm sword cultivator is amazing. What's so good about a woman who's about to close her shop just because her man is out drinking more wine with friends? The young hidden official is good at everything, but his single-mindedness is not so good. It would be great if he could imitate Xiao Sun, the previous hidden official, and defect from the Sword Qi Great Wall. In the wild world, he would be kept for 3 years a year. 165 days, changing partners every day. Who doesn't know that the current co-leader of the wilderness, who is an outstanding swordsman, and Zhou Qingao, a close disciple of Wenhai Zhoumi, are famous as 2 secret official supporters, Tian Zihao and Di Zihao. The Liuxia boat intentionally or unintentionally slowed down and passed by Zhongsu on Oriole Island, the boundary of Shujian Lake. He saw the young man in Confucian robes on the bow of the boat. This old Yuanying monk who was said to be the most like the genealogy monk in Shujian Lake took the initiative to board the boat and said, he changed his mind and was willing to leave the true realm genealogy and seek refuge with Gu Kan. I never thought that Gu Kan would also say that he had changed his mind. Even if you, Zhongsu, were willing to join my sect today, you would not be the first head of the sect and would have to start from the most ordinary position of registered worship. Zhongsu's face turned gloomy, but in the end he still did not get off the ship. Instead, he dropped a talisman with Oriole Island to let the group of disciples he had chosen board the ship. Chen Pingan had an honest talk with Xing Qingjia before. Since he didn't know that Yuanhu Taoist fellows would come to Haoran Tianxia, he made a deal with Tao Ting, who had now turned into a Nen Taoist priest. The latter gave Jinquaqing refining from the several secret techniques of the robe. The Nun Taoist will take 10% of all the profits, and both parties will settle the accounts every 60 years. Xing Qingjia had a completely indifferent attitude towards this. He only said that Mr. Guan did not need to care about Jinquaqing's opinion. The secret techniques of Jinquaqing weaving mastered by Senior Tao Ting were already slightly outdated old almanacs. Now Jinquaqing refines robes. His unique method is, don't come up with tricks, there are new ways. Not to mention that there are 9 continents in Haoran. No matter how good the sales of Jinquaqing's robes are, if they can capture the business share of 2 or 3 continents, it is already the limit of Jinquaqing's output. It is always easy for smart people to deal with smart people. In the world, southeast, northwest, there are always gatherings and separations, and we need to go our separate ways. Chao Rong, the Tianjun of the Baiyu Jingnan Huaqing lineage, brought Chao Fuyang back to Lingfei Palace, but his name will not be recorded for the time being. Let him retreat in a deserted Taoist temple on the top of a mountain to think about his mistakes, and allow him to practice and make amends for his mistakes. Chao Rong gave Zhao Fuyang a decree. Whether he can become his direct successor depends on whether Zhao Fuyang can reach the nascent soul realm without taking the winding road. If he succeeds, he can become Chao Rong's direct disciple. If not, he will be expelled from the mountain again and become a wild cultivator in the mountains until death. In addition, the dark and thin girl named Ni Qing really got the Taoist title of Qingni in the ethereal and ethereal Lingfei Palace Patriarch Hall. She also became Chao Tianjin's personal disciple, and became the same generation of senior disciples as Xiangjuan, the contemporary palace master named Dongting. Dreams come true, which always makes people want to slap themselves in the face to confirm whether it is true or false. The girl still remembers that in the darkness of the night, a young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown said to her, "Fellow Taoist Qingni, you and the two of us can kill 14 realms together." Fortunately, the Taoist priest who pretended to be clever and fooling around didn't forget to add another explanation to her: they are 14 first-level Qi practitioners. Many people and things in the world were just ordinary at that time. Fortunately, this woman who has the friendship of a fellow villager is now also practicing Taoism in Lingfei Palace, and occasionally comes here to disturb her practice. In fact, Ni Qing also knows what the other party has planned, but it doesn't matter, the mountain is not pure. It seems like I can even hear the sound of falling leaves clearly. It is always good to have someone to talk to and talk about hometown affairs. The woman's name is Yu Yo. She and her sisters Yu Rong and Yu were once the personal maids of Yu Chuanji, the master of Fenwan Palace. They each had the opportunity to be blessed. Yu Yo worshipped a golden man from Lingfei Palace. Dan Dixian was his master, and he had just become a genealogy monk registered in the ancestral master hall of Lingfei Palace. Yu Rongyu also became a direct disciple of Xingzi, the Jingxian temple on the ancestral mountain of the Jinkei sect. Yu Yo was happy for his good sisters, but also felt that he was luckier. After all, Jingxianan was one of the downhill sects of Lingfei Palace. It's just that the two women reunited in a foreign land, but their generations are quite different now. Yu, who has not yet been consecrated and has no title, has to call Ni Qing Grandmaster Qingni. The mountain goddess of the falling Yuan mountain also went to the Yunshao dynasty and was able to fill her vacancy, becoming a mountain goddess canonized by the imperial court. Luo, a female martial artist, went to the Baihua Lake because Chao Tianjun made a special trip for her to send a vague decree, saying only that there was an opportunity there waiting for her to take it, and, don't wait until the time comes. Luo met an old monk who was reluctant to use this as a dojo at a ruined water palace. He was a slow-talking young monk who had a catchphrase, "I am here, how about a bad temper?" Ni Qing could not always connect the sword-carrying boy and the young Taoist priest with the young hermit official and the headmaster by Yu Jinglu. I always feel that those two guys are just like the two bachelors squatting at the end of the village, wearing tattered cotton-padded jackets with cotton wool exposed, sullen eyebrows and droopy eyes, hands in sleeves, looking at the passing women, as if this is what they are. The Qingbai mansion in Chiseling did not move, nor did it suffer any military disaster. The owner of the mansion, Bai Mao, was so lucky that he couldn't figure it out. He always felt that Qing Qian, the old man, and the court of Qingxin Kingdom looked at him with admiration and favored him when they chatted for a few words. This is a bit outrageous. Palace Master Bai is puzzled. Could it be that my ancestors had great masters and were gods on the mountain? But when Bai Mao was young, he carefully looked through the family tree and found that there was no such thing. Bai Mao missed the two new friends he had just met very much. One liked to brag, and the other probably had to do some forced buying and selling because of his livelihood. Now Bai Mao will always think of how he seemed to have slapped the sword-carrying boy on the head by the well in the small town at the foot of Hehuan Mountain. If we meet again, will we try again? Luo Luo Shan did not wait for Xiago, who was wandering around somewhere, but instead waited for the pair of master and disciple, Lao Defer and Yu Yu. At the gate of the mountain, the old deaf boy saw the white-haired boy who couldn't carry it clearly, an old acquaintance from the Sword Chi Great Wall prison. Because it was the first time for Yu Yu to use the Three Mountains talisman, his realm was not high enough, and his body was not strong enough, so he felt dizzy just after he stood still and vomited. The white-haired boy originally thought that the old deaf boy was just a passerby on his family's hillside. As soon as he heard that the old deaf boy wanted to be his family's enshrinement, he immediately became unhappy. The old deaf child also saw that the other person barely had the word disgust written on his face, and felt quite helpless. What was even more helpless was that the white-haired boy raised his chin. After being reminded, the old deaf child could only call out, "Grandpa." The old deaf child did not forget to speak from his heart. Before the old deaf boy became a formal worshipper, the white-haired boy started to put on small shoes for the other party. Ha ha ha! As soon as he had the power, he gave the order, "Yo Yu doesn't need to introduce, I know it very well. Old deaf boy, you hurry up and report your name, Taoist number, place of origin, and level of cultivation." The old deaf boy had no choice but to report his name Gontang, Taoist name Longxing, the location of the Taoist temple in the past, etc. At that time, Chen Pingon left Shuanshan, and without outsiders, the old blind man began to miss his beloved disciple. The old blind man showed mercy before the law. Seeing that the ascended realm lackey was protecting the path of his beloved disciple Li Huai and not causing a big problem, the old blind man just used the excuse that he had no merit and hard work and threw it to the young man. A Taoist ancient Taoist book, which is the first half of the mountain refining technique. Now Taoist Master Nin is digging a large tunnel in Tongya Island. In name, he is helping to move the mountain because of the good relationship between Li Huai and Chen Pingon. In fact, it is a true mountain building demonstration. Lian Hun is as generous as Tao Ting in the wilderness. Occasionally, he will feel uneasy about his conscience. Could he be too resourceful and scheming too many hidden officials? As a result, the old man in yellow was patrolling in Dadu, trying to find out someone who was smashing talismans and delaying his mountain refining. In a daze, he was caught in Shuanshan. The young Taoist doesn't know what he did wrong again. How his Taoist heart is has long been unimportant. It is just a piece of gall that may break at any time. Used to it. The old blind man smiled half-heartedly. "I heard that you have made a deal with Chen Pingon." The young Taoist had a sad face and felt extremely sad in his heart. "Well, Chen Pingon, you're just trying to make some magic money from you, so why are you suing me here? If you want to grab money, just say so, why bother negotiating a deal?" The old blind man said, "Did I give you face?" The young Taoist shows his true body and goes to the ground. "Please stay." After waiting for a long time, but still not waiting for the old blind man's kick, the young Taoist raised his head, a little confused. The old blind man took out a Taoist book from his sleeve and threw it to the young Taoist's mouth. "Take it away." The young Taoist hurriedly grabbed the Taoist book, the second half of the mountain refining technique. The old blind man said, "If within 100 years, you still can't join the Tao and can't compete with Zhu Yan, you can just lie there and enjoy the blessings in the Ascension realm for the rest of your life." The young Taoist transformed into a human form, holding the book in both hands, weeping with joy, and bowed to express his thanks. "Barbarian Peach Pavilion, I would like to thank my predecessors for their kindness in preaching." But the old blind man was so grateful to Tao Ting that he didn't take it seriously at all and just told him to get out of here so that he wouldn't be an eyesore. When the young Taoist returned to Dadu in Tonggishao and regained consciousness, there were two vague words lingering in his ears. "Now that you are in the Ascension realm, your vision is still narrow. When you see me, you are like a frog at the bottom of a well looking up at the moon." When you are lucky enough to reach the 14th realm one day, you will see me like a mayfly in the sky. Xiago also returned to Luopa Mountain, saying that he missed Shanzhu Qin and Guoguo very much after wandering around for a few days. Chen Pingan said that he planned to let Xiaomo go to Tiaoyu Mountain to teach Taoism in the future. The underlying meaning of a certain sentence that goes unspoken could not be more simple. Xiazishi, since your Xiaomo is not in the mountains for the time being. Xiago immediately understood, rubbed the mink hat, and put on a posture of showing no one else but me, Mountain Master, I'll do it, I'll do it. When they arrived at Tiaoyu Mountain, the girl in the mink hat saw the 8 chi practitioners and said straight to the point, "My name is Xiago, and I am Xiaomo's Taoist companion. In these days, I will teach you well, and you will learn well, and try to drink my wedding wine with Xiaomo." The 8 people looked at each other in shock. They had thought of many ways to meet the preacher, but they never imagined that it would be such a person and such a scene. Xiago remembered the mountain master's instructions, so she added a few words. "One of my Taoist names is Bai Jing. He comes from the wild world and has beheaded several throne monsters." After the introduction, he was ready to preach. Everyone cheered up. "You have to start hearing the truth." Ignoring the dumbfounded little guys, Xiago went to work on his own. "I heard that the mountain master planned to visit the Qianglin sect in Luzhou, Beiju in the near future." Xiago became energetic when he heard this and would not feel sleepy again. As for temporarily replacing Xiaomo and giving 8 wastes, well, you can't say that, and you can't say that one day in the future. Some of them are the genealogy monks of the Jisa Peak ancestral master hole. She helps them teach Taoism. Just a little bit from her fingernails is enough for these guys to learn it for hundreds of thousands of years. As for what to do in Qianglin sect, Xiago didn't hesitate to ask, what else could be done? Either ask for swordsmanship or demolish the ancestral hole. Xiago was very happy about this. What a wonderful name I got. In other places, dogs fight against human power. It's good for the mountain owner, but the man is the dog's power. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.